for some reason, I remember looking back at Jon and just saying, this is going to be the last time I see my husband.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Trace of Burnout. I'm Roger.
And I'm Dan.
And today we have a special episode. We are joined by Jon and Samantha Turnbull, the co-authors of 0% Chance, A Soldier's Memoir, a tribute to the cross-functional team Manbij. We're going to get into that today, but go ahead.
Yep. For the audience, you guys are our first virtual guests. So if anything seems off and out of the norm, then that's because it is. So thank you for being our guinea pigs, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Perfect. So we'll launch just like we do every other episode. So, Jon, we'll start with you. What is your family's history or background of military service, if any?
So with military service, I come from a long line of servants, be it in the military, the police, law enforcement. It goes way back, and I don't know how far back we want to go to the, we can have some fun with it, the Scottish War for Independence. King Robert the Bruce, we've all seen the movie Braveheart.
Yeah.
My family fought in that war. Actually, my the person I was related to, his name was Ian Rule. He saved the life of King Robert the Bruce after the Battle of Bannockburn, when Scotland received its independence. He saved the life of Robert the Bruce. He was knocked off his horse by a bull, and the bull started to charge and gore the king. So this young man, Ian Rule, jumped off of his horse as a squire. So a baron holder, he carried the flag, turned the bull, and King Robert the Bruce was so grateful for him saving his life, he gave him the surname Turnbull and gave him lands in Scotland. My family fought in that war of independence. Then a little later, in the early 1700s, I believe it was, fought in another war against the English in the Scotland, with Bonnie Prince Charlie. From there, my family was kicked out of the country and sent to a place called America. I'm sorry?
Understandably.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, no. So my family fought. Yeah, the two war more or less wars for independence in Scotland. From there, were kicked out, sent to America in the early 1700s, to New England, where they spent some time until the American Revolution. That's another time to fight the English. So they rose up and fought. After the American Revolution, my family moved south to Louisiana, where they bided their time until War of 1812 rolled around. It's another good time to fight the English. So my family raised up arms, fought in the Battle of New Orleans, and from there, my family fought for the South during the American Civil War. They continued to be in the military over and over and over again. My grandfather served post World War II, Korea, and served during Vietnam. Moved back to the United States after Vietnam, and transferred from Texas to, of all places, Michigan. I'm sure that wasn't a culture shock at all. And then, so that's kind of my family's military lineage. Fought in a lot of the major wars. As far as just civil servants, my mother's side of the family, my grandfather was a police officer for the city of Flint, Michigan, which we all know how Flint is. Everybody reads about it in the newspaper. It's a pretty grisly town. He retired in 1986 as a homicide detective, and I think he remained retired it was just a few short days before he went back to work, because retirement didn't suit him very well. Well, lo and behold, you can't work for the sheriff's department if you're not being paid a salary. So he and the union got together and they sat down with the sheriff, and they negotiated a lump sum of $1 a year. So he began working as a cold case homicide detective for Genesee County, the city of Flint, for $1 a year. And that was 1986. So 30, I'm not good with math, so bear with me, but 30 some years ago. And lo and behold, about 2 years ago, he was really excited to receive a pay raise. He's now getting paid $1 a week, so he doesn't know what he's going to do with his taxes because it's going to break the bank. But after my grandfather served as a police officer, my mom's brother and sister both joined the police force, and they serve. My father, he works for the state of Michigan in probation and parole, so still in the corrections field. So that's kind of leads up to my desire why I wanted to be a servant to our nation. So that's kind of the what led me to look at the military.
That's pretty
Awesome.
impressive.
Yeah.
You're the first one we've spoken to who at least took their lineage back to the old country,
Yeah.
right? So,
All right, now, Sam, this is your opportunity to tell us that your family history of service goes back to Charlemagne, and you have a French side of service that goes through all these different wars.
That you knew all about me, so I don't have it. No, honestly, my family they are the total opposite of John's. None of my family really was in the military. I had a great grandpa who was in World War II as a cook, but besides that, of course, when I met John and he said, "Hey, I'm going to West Point," I didn't even know what West Point was at the time. So it was one of those things where meeting John, my world changed, my viewpoint of the military changed, everything. I never had anybody in the police work. So of course his grandpa terrified me when he was just this big, tall police officer that I feared, and I was like, wow, I'm dating his grandson now because I met him at church. And so, I mean, I had no idea anything about police work, anything about the military. So everything with John was all new to me. Of course, I was very young when I met John too. So pretty much since I've met John, my respect for the military and the police was greatly increased.
well, tell everybody how y'all met because I think that's a good story in and of itself.
Sorry about our dog. Um, our when John, well, I was 12. My family moved from Flint to a more country city. Um, Grew up or moved to 10 acres. Sorry about our dog. Um, Moved to a house on 10 acres, and we grew up in the country. When we moved there, we moved in with my grandparents until our house was built. And my grandma said, if you're living with me, you guys are going to church camp. And I was, church camp? Like, I really, thanks, let's go. We stayed there for a week, but I had no intention of wanting to go to this church camp whatsoever. And the minute that I got there, I was walking my uncle's dog, and John walked by, and of course I was like, I might like church camp. And so
It's not so bad.
we met at the church campgrounds. Our family all grew up in the same district or um, same church, and we had no idea. We had started attending a church that his grandparents have attended since they became Christians, and then my grandparents were just trying out a new church, and it stuck that we liked it. Um, so John and I, we met at the church campgrounds, but we did not see each other after that week at camp. Um, we had to say our goodbyes, and my grandma, she had to take me home, and she said, Sam, don't be upset because you're going to marry that boy one day. And I just thought, oh, that's kind of a bold thing to say. I'm 12. I have no desire to marry anybody right now. And she said, no, it'll all work out. That's who you're going to marry one day. And 3 years went by. John at the time was active duty in the reserves, getting ready to go to West Point.
Not yet. I was still in school.
Well, yeah, still in school, but
Yeah.
getting ready to graduate and go to West Point. And the 3 years went by. At the time, there was no way to communicate with each other whatsoever. And his aunt, I had just broken up with my first boyfriend. I was very young, still 15, so nothing serious at all. And um, I had seen his aunt at our church, and she said, "Hey, Sam, I want you to meet my nephew. He's coming to the church today." And I just thought, all right, whatever, I'll meet this guy. And as she had said that, John walked into the doors of the sanctuary of the church, and I said, "Hold that thought. There's a guy who just walked in. I have not seen him in 3 years. I want to go say hi to him real quick." And she said, "Oh, well, funny, that's my nephew." And so that's how we kind of rekindled seeing each other as friends. And John, of course, then said, "Hey, I would like to take you out to lunch today." And the rest is history. Um, and my grandma was right.
Grandmas are usually right.
Okay. Well, you are our John. You are our second West Pointer. So, can you run us through a bit of the admissions process and whatnot that you went through in order to
Oh
be
dear
accepted?
Lord. Yes. So you have you have the physical spectrum where, I mean, just like, you had to, I mean, I had to pass a PT test when I first enlisted. Uh, but so you had to do the PT, and West Point had its own PT standard, kind of like the, now the, what is the, eight, was it ACFT?
Yeah, the ACFT. Yep.
The ACFT. So kind of like the ACFT, where you had shuttle runs, you had to pick up heavy things, put them down. So that's the easy part of it, because it's just, I mean, you're that it's physical. Like you can either do it or you can't do it, and you know what the standards are. The other things where you had to receive a nomination from either a congressman or a senator, and so all of the uh, our representatives and federal representatives hold more or less interviews, tryouts, where you go and you meet with them. And so that was the hardest part for me, because I mean, having two senators and just a small handful of congressmen, and there's only so many seats available. So that was the second part. You had to take multiple tests. I mean, besides the ASVAB, I mean, just to get into the military, but you had to do the SAT, the have good grades. You had to demonstrate leadership of some sort. The big ones being, leadership on a team sport, or leadership getting out into the community, be it like the 4-H program, or I don't know if that's everywhere, if that's just here in Michigan, but volunteer hours, going out and volunteering, helping people, walking little old ladies across the street, those kind of things, saving cats from trees. Well, no, it's firemen. Sorry. But that's the admission process. I multiple essays. I wrote. I had quite a few essays had to write, and for myself, I was I missed the bar, or missed the standard, just by a little bit. I think it was my SAT scores were slightly below what their average SAT scores were. So they offered me a position, or they offered me a slot at the prep school for West Point, to get my SAT scores up a little bit. So I jumped on it, because, I mean, West Point prep school is, West Point. It was, that was my foot in the door. So I ended up going and doing that. And I always laugh, because uh, my SAT scores, they just kept my SAT scores. So I didn't have to retake the tests. But I was told by the admissions, some people at the admissions, that I was a very unique person, in that they had to go back through all their pamphlets, all of their statistics, and change them because of my SAT score. They had to literally lower their average. I'm like, haha, I had an impact on West Point, I guess.
Lowering the bar every step of the way. There you go.
That's right. Let's say, and just because you might not be qualified, but you can still do a good job. And
Yeah.
For context, what year was this that you were accepted into West Point?
so I was accepted in 2004, 2005. Went to the prep school in 2005, and then 2006 I started as a plebe or a freshman at West Point
Yeah.
Okay.
to graduate in 2010. So I always like telling people like 4-year academy, and I liked it so much I did it in 5 years, and
Right.
nobody ever laughs. But
Do you remember offhand which senator or representative, um, I guess, chose you
Your
for
your
admission?
nomination. Yeah.
Yeah.
no, yes, I do. Yeah, it was a guy by the name. He's no longer in, but a guy by the name of Bart Stupak.
Oh yeah.
I
Yeah. Yeah.
sat down, a congressman, sat down and interviewed with a couple of the senators and a couple other congressmen, and this Mr. Congress Representative Stupak was probably one of the most memorable interviews because rather than have a whole team of people there interviewing you and having literally just having a committee to do it, he did it himself because he said that he thought it was important enough that he wanted to be there and talk to the people. So his interviews were more like this, just a dialogue, like, "How are you? Good. Why do you want to do this? Why, what's your history? What do you want out of this?" And it was, I liked it because they weren't bubblegummy kind of answers or
Yeah.
cookie cutter questions. It was very personal, and it appeared that he genuinely cared and he understood what he was doing. So I hope that makes sense.
Yeah. You chose to attend West Point, and based off the timeline you gave during a time where you knew that we were fighting a two front war in Central Asia and Southwest Asia. So what's kind of going through your mind as a high school senior when you're saying this is the thing for me?
So this all stemmed from 9/11, and I know everybody has, well, not everybody these days has a 9/11 story because even some of our soldiers weren't born yet. That's a scary, sad thing. But
We're the old
for
guys now.
me, it was really important. On 9/11, I was working as a lifeguard in one of our local pools when my boss called me into her office. She had a TV set up in her office, and I walked into her office right as the second tower was struck by the plane. Talking heads came on the TV talking about how we were attacked. America's been attacked. Many people are dead and dying, and what's going on. They're trying to figure it out. And I remember watching, being like, first, we're the greatest nation in the world. Like, who one thinks they can attack us and get away with it, and second, like that's it angered me and made me very frustrated. And it was on 9/11 in 2001 that I decided that I was going to do something about it. I wanted to, the buzzwords for us, I wanted to promote justice, uh, and protect the American way of life and defend liberty and defend freedom. So I'm like, I'm going to do something about it. I'm going to join the military. My junior year of high school, I sat down with the recruiter and we went down and I did my military, was it the military evaluation MEPS
Yeah.
program or military entrance program? Either way, went down there and did all the underwear Olympics where, they poke and prod you, make sure you're good to go. Uh, Raised my right hand, and that's when uh, first time I swore to support and defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic, bear true faith and allegiance to the same. And we know how what the oath is. Can't remember coming home and telling my parents, "Hey, guess what I did today?" And they're like, "What'd you do?" "I joined the army." And they're like, "You did what?" "You're a junior and you need parents' permission for that." I was 17 at the time. It's like, "Yeah, well, I did the delayed entry program, so I really don't go in. I can do basic this year, finish up AIT next year after graduating high school." And they're like, "Oh, so I had a year to train up for the military," which was good. I mean, I played sports in school, so I was physically fit. But as I mentioned, my academics were uh, not the greatest. And even though they weren't, well, my academics were very good in high school. I had good grades. Just the big tests, the ACT, SATs were not well. So I wanted
Same.
to do better on those. Uh, but I had good grades. So my parents were like, "Hey, have you thought about any of the military academies? Like, Air Force Academy, Annapolis, or West Point. And I was like, I really haven't, but I'm not interested in the Air Force or the Navy. I don't even like to swim, and I'm pretty sure they don't let you fish off their boats or their ships. I was like, so I'll look at the Army one. So that's when I started investigating, looking into West Point, and applied. And lo and behold, over the year of application, my senior year, applied and was received that nomination from the congressman, and then received an acceptance letter from him. And that's what got me to go to West Point. I do have to tell the joke though that I always love. We always made. I mean, the rivalries between Army, Navy, and Air Force are. I mean, they're great, and I love them. But I always loved going to the Air Force Academy, and it was always an Air Force Academy cadet. People were like, one thing that makes all the midshipmen at Annapolis, all the cadets at West Point, all the cadets at the Air Force Academy the same, is that all of them apply to go to the Air Force Academy, and it's just so selective that only a few are selected there. Always makes me laugh thinking about the poor Air Force guys because we're like, oh yeah, whatever you tell yourself.
It helps them sleep at night, of course.
So you might have a good football team, whatever. We won't talk about football though.
So you're heading off to school, and it's 2004. You said 2005.
It was 2000, yeah, 2005.
Okay, and that is not the era of communication that we have now. So
No, it was. I mean, this was still. I mean, I think I actually got my first cell phone while I was at the prep school.
Yeah.
I think
Because
at West Point.
oh, was at West
Yeah.
Point? But yeah, no, there we everything at the prep school was handwritten letters, and I mean through the cadet candidate basic training. I mean, it was handwritten letters back and forth. That was our only mean
Calling
of communication.
cards.
What?
Calling cards too.
Oh yeah, and then once the cadet candidate basic training was finished, we had a payphone in like the common area that we could run down and use, but you had to have a calling card for it. So that became my favorite, present. People birthday or Christmas, whatever.
Oh, yeah.
People are like, what do you want? So get me a calling card so I can call Samantha.
Yeah. So yeah, that leads us to our next question, Samantha. What's going on with you, kind of during this, going off to school, training, etc.? What's going on with you?
I was still in high school when John and I started dating in 2005. I graduated in 2007. So we did not have the typical high school, I don't know, relationship. Of course, everybody before John left, they said, John, you and Sam should probably not get serious. You should not really even date each other. Long distance is not going to work out. You guys are just going to end up with heartbreak. So just quit while you're ahead type thing.
so supportive.
And yeah, yeah. And so
They loved me.
we ended up though, I was of course in high school. I think I was a sophomore when he left for the prep school. But we still dated. I mean, any chance we could. His parents were extremely, extremely generous. And every time they went to visit John, they would have like a parents' weekend or something. They asked if I wanted to come. And of course, yes, please. That would be wonderful.
That's awesome.
Of course, growing up, my family was not the wealthiest. We never traveled outside of the state of Michigan. So my first vacation I ever went on was to Missouri, but then it was to say goodbye to some of his family before he left. But then we ended up going to the prep school at West Point to see John for a parents' weekend.
And that was down in New Jersey, right outside of New York City.
And of course,
Gotcha.
It was the same weekend as my junior year prom. And I remember everybody's like, oh, getting ready for prom season. And I just, in the back of my mind, I was like, I really could care less going to my high school prom. I hear there's this thing called a military ball. Never been to one before, but John mentioned it and he said, hey, get a dress, come out to the ball. And it was for a parents' weekend too, of course. So, of course, every girl wants to go to a ball. And I said, yep, I'm coming. His parents took me out for that. And my parents were able to come too as well, which was kind of cool. But my sister, I have a twin sister I said, do you want to go to the junior prom or would you like to go with me to this military ball? And I said, every guy in uniform is pretty good looking. And she was like, well, twist my arm. So her and I both moved in. And we had a really good weekend. It was really the eye-opening weekend for me to see what is the military. I mean, which the prep school is not the it's not the military.
It's kind of like dipping your toe in, right?
I know. And so of course I was like, hey, this is pretty cool. I like how everything is so patriotic. And of course, every high school girl, if they were to experience that, they of course too would be like, this is what I want in my life if they ever experienced, I guess. But to me, it was very eye opening. And I said, I can see myself doing this and supporting Jon through all of this. I loved everything about it. I loved the history. I liked the people. I got along with everybody. I
We
loved
couldn't
his
talk,
friends.
so I didn't bug you.
Yeah. I mean, it was not the typical long distance relationship that you hear about in the movies. I feel like Jon and I, our relationship was something that was new. I mean, you see all the old movies of the couples writing letters to each other when they go off to war. And I always thought, man, that's so special. It's such a cute thing. And I can see myself doing that, no problem. And so we stuck it out throughout his full first year at West Point. We had I don't think we had any second thought of, hey, maybe we should break up. This isn't working out. It was always that anticipation of Jon coming home and me going out to visit him. We looked forward to that, and which I think it takes a special relationship to do that.
Yeah.
Special kind of crazy because, I mean, at West Point, the first year, I mean, you leave. I mean, I saw her maybe once a quarter, once every couple of months. I mean, Christmas, and then for like their spring fling, spring break type thing, and then summer for a week, and then each year you could add a little bit to it to the point where our senior year, or my senior year, my first year, I was seeing her about once every 2 months. She'd come out. We'd do for ring weekend, and we'd go to the 100th night ball, and we would do different. There were some great events, and I mean a lot of really memorable events where she could come out. I mean the ball was always or the I don't want to use the word balls, but the balls were always fun to go to.
Yeah.
Oh, it sounds really bad, but
It was like a good break
formal
for both
events.
of us,
The formal events were
Yeah, sure.
yes.
and it was a
There we
good
go.
break for both of us because I mean I was still in, like I said, I was still in high school. Um, and then he, of course, being off to college for the first year, we're trying to figure out school. We're trying to figure out what are we going to do for the rest of our lives. And of course, fast forward, we make it through the first year. We loved it. He, of course, then went to West Point, and we thought, oh, okay, this is going to be a challenge. This is not the prep school anymore. To the point where his parents, I mean, I established that relationship with his parents that his mom, I would tell everybody, my mom, well, she's now my mother-in-law, but she's like my best friend. We go on these vacations together. I don't know many people who would take just a girlfriend, their son's girlfriend, out on 12-hour trips in the
That's pretty
car.
amazing. Yeah.
My in-laws are wonderful people, but she would always, Sam, hey, okay, here's how it's going to be at West Point. They're going to have a parents' weekend. But before the parents' weekend, on Jon's very first day of West Point, they do this thing called Acceptance Day. But before Acceptance Day, they have a rehearsal,
Reception.
a reception day. So our day. Do you want to come out to this with us? And I thought, yeah, I want to see Jon's first day at West Point. I want to see what West Point is. I want to see this. I want to know where he's going to be at for the next 4 years and what he's doing. And so his mom, she goes, all right, well, the only catch is we're camping because we're cheap. And camping? And so I was like, well, all right. I've camped before. This shouldn't be too bad. It was literally on like a mountain that we stayed in. It was fun. We look back now and we loved it. But
and she did that for like every formal event.
Single time we went out, we camped.
So getting her ball gown, getting all pretty dialed up with the tiara and the pretty hair and all that all doing it in a tent.
A
Always
one
fun.
That
person
is
tent at
awesome.
that. But
That is a
his
Renaissance
his mom
woman right there.
though,
Yeah.
yeah, his mom though at the time she said, by the way, I signed us up to do this rehearsal practice that they have, and I thought rehearsal, and she goes, yeah, it's pretty much like the senior cadets. They have to practice bringing in the first year cadets, the plebes. Um, but they need to rehearse on somebody. So I signed us up and we're going to do this. And basically, the firsties, they're going to basically do the first day of boot camp for you. And I was like, what are we doing? And so we, of course, we did the rehearsal day practice. And I mean, we laugh about it now, but at the time, my mother-in-law was about in tears having these cadets yell at her. She was, I don't want my son to do this. I don't want him to do this anymore.
What have I done?
Here's I have no, I mean, and no experience with the military whatsoever. And so I'm just like, well, these guys are no different than me. And who are they going to yell at me? I'm from Flint, Michigan. I'm pretty tough. I can handle these cadets. And so here they are yelling at my mother-in-law. Then they yell at me. And I'm just like, oh, time out. Don't yell at me like this. And so here's my mother-in-law. I mean, well, at the time, John's mom, she is getting tears and I don't want my son to do this. And of course I make it through and I goes, no, he's going to be just fine.
Why are these
and
boys so mean?
So mean.
Yeah.
Yeah. Why do you want me to step up to your line, not before your line, not after your line, not over your line? Step up to my line. Yeah. All right, I'll step up to your.
But it was really,
Don't
to
lie.
me, it was definitely the eye-opening thing. I'm so thankful that we did that because I would have never experienced that anywhere. And to have that opportunity to say, you know, okay, here's what John is going to be doing this week, this month, for the next year. You know, this is going to be challenged. It's going to be hard. They're there to mentally break them while they're trying to get an education. And it was tough. It was not an easy thing. But of course, then when John made it through that summer, we went out again and we were able to be there for the graduation of it and say, you know, hey, now
Our acceptance day.
his acceptance day, and he has now made it to be a cadet at West Point. I mean, it definitely puts you in your place, and to know that, like, to know what he went through just for one day, it was like, wow, John, congratulations, you deserve this. And all the cadets, it was hard and it was a challenge, and for them to each make it through that, it was very humbling, and to sit there and congratulate them, it was very special.
And that was the easy stuff. The cadet basic training, drill sergeants yelling at you, cadets hazing, not really hazing, but just tough loving you. That was easy. It was when we started up at school and we had 5 classes and they expected you to have 2 hours worth of homework per class a day. And you're like, 2 hours a day and I've got 5 classes. That's 10 hours of homework. I'm like, there literally isn't enough time in the day for this. And time management skills kind of got fun.
Yeah.
But I do have to say, talking about Samantha and her being by my side, I mean, you know, just how great she was putting up with me. I mean, I continued to write letters home. By this time, we had, I believe we had email, Facebook, and all that stuff was up and running. But
not until
phones,
not until the end.
Oh, yeah,
His
not until the
junior
end.
senior year, we finally got that.
Yeah, but
like,
initially
initially
it was just, you know, it was like could run down and use the pay phones, and you'd have like 2 minutes to make a phone call, and always loved it because in 2 minutes, I mean, how can you develop a relationship over 2 minutes, especially when a twin, her twin specifically, that sounds the exact same, answers the phone, like, oh, and I'll be like, oh, I miss you, I love you, yada yada yada. Talk for 2 minutes, tell her
I'm
about
doing
my whole
good.
day.
Tell my family hi.
Yeah, and then I'd be like, all right, well, I gotta go. I'll love you. And she'd be like, oh, wait, are you sure you don't want to talk to my sister Sam? You choice words.
Turn that
Send my regards.
We had those. You know, it was a lot of development, and as I mentioned, we saw each other maybe 2, maybe 3 times. My first year at West Point, my freshman year. And for her to stick it out and just kind of, let's keep doing this. It was, I mean, truly wonderful. And, you know, if somebody will do that for you, they'll do just about anything to help you out. And,
Yeah.
You know, and every year, I would like to say every year got a little bit easier. I mean, you know, I got my own email. Yay. Now I can email her because she'd get her own email. And then I got a phone that, you know, I could call anytime I wanted, still with the calling card. And and then splurged when I made the became a junior and was making the big bucks as a cow at West Point to buy my own cell phone so now I could call
A
her. And
hot pink cell phone
a
at
hot
that.
pink cell phone, whatever, it still calls out, even though I had to stick my head out our third or fourth story window and lean out practically the part of falling out just to talk to her. But we pushed through and didn't let any of the obstacles stop us. We found a way around them and continued until I proposed my junior year, so my cow year. She was a freshman in college, and right,
Yep.
freshman in college, and I was a junior. Proposed to her, and we started planning out our lives. And you can't get married at West Point. You can't have any dependents there. So like many cadets, it becomes we didn't do the typical Las Vegas chapel style wedding. Just show up, do your vows, and you get leave the premise of the West Point Chapel. We waited a week after my graduation, and then we were married 1 week after, just enough time for me to say, "Hi, I love you." All right, now I've got to go to officer basic training, so or basic officer leader course, whatever it was.
You're
So
You went
left.
to air
Well, I
assault
didn't even
school
do that
first.
right away. I
You
went
went to
to
air assault school.
I went down to Benning, went to Airborne. So we, newlyweds. First thing I do, being newlyweds, is I leave her for airborne training, which everybody's been there as
Welcome to the Army.
knows how wonderful
Of
airborne
course,
school
being
is.
from Michigan, he's down
Yep.
in just south of Atlanta, and I was like, ugh,
Just melting.
have fun. I'm going back home. I'm not doing this.
But she
Okay.
came down, visited me, was there for my graduation from airborne.
Okay. Before we move on to the rest of you actually beginning your career, just real quick about your time at West Point. The last West Pointer that we talked to was a Southwest American water polo champion, and continued that at his time at West Point. You had said that you had played sports in high school. Did that continue while you were at West Point as far as the sports, or did you go about your physical requirements through the regular, PT stuff?
A little bit of both, yes. I did not. So, like at West Point, every cadet is an athlete, whether intercollegiate sports or intramurals. West Point's broken up into companies, into 4 regiments, and then each regiment 2 battalions, and each battalion had 4 or 5 companies. So each company had a team, so that like a soccer team, a football team, a rugby team, a swim team, and they would clash it out. But I volunteered and tried out for the fencing team my freshman year, and I made it onto the team. So I was a fencer. I mean, who doesn't like sword fighting? Like that was the coolest thing ever.
Right.
It's your Scottish roots. Yes.
Of course, he's like, they offer fencing. I'm going to do it. I was fencing.
Yep, sword fighting, and we get to
Okay.
sword fight the Navy, the midshipmen, and if there's something we could beat them at, which I know I'll grout in my teeth and say not football. It was sword fighting, so that was fun. So I did that, but the physical side of things was, we had a phenomenal PT program, a state of the art gym. That gym there is called Arvin Gym. They had everything. If you can imagine it, they had it there. From swimming to, they had an indoor obstacle course that I'm pretty sure if Satan could have his way in screwing up the lives of anybody in the world, he created that indoor obstacle course. Not just crazy stuff, jumping over tires, through tires, balance beams, monkey bars that instead of like doing pull-ups on monkey bars, you have to run across the top of them. But then they add there's no asbestos there that I know of, at least, but you think it is. Like you can see the dust in the air, and it's crazy. But they have that. They had a rock wall. They had your freshman year back in 2006. All freshmen boxed, so we had boxing gym. This place was phenomenal. Plus, you had some of the greatest, in my opinion, some of the greatest athletes. One of the majors that we had, I guess on staff at West Point, but he was, I believe he was one of the TAC officers. later became one of my commanders. He's my commander in Iraq and Syria. He and his brother, so Jeff and his brother's name was Luke, and I'll just admit the last names for now. But they together had won the best ranger competition over. I think they did it like 3 years in a row. They won it, and so he was there in their PE program. So this guy Jeff would be like, "Hey, let's all go work out." And the first time you're like, "Yeah, we're gonna go work out with him. He's amazing. He's like just a phenomenal beast of a man." And after the workout, you're like, "I'm never doing that again." Uh, but West Point, I mean, we had like different places you'd run to, and it was built. I mean, it was built in the quite a hilly area. I
Hudson
mean,
Valley.
yeah, there's some yeah. Um, so PT kind of took it on my own, and I loved it. Like that was one of the things that I loved doing, and that transfer. So from high school, I did sports, football, soccer, a lot of running,
Swimming.
and that transferred over to West Point. But I did end up fencing all 4 years at West Point, and
He was also on their Sandhurst team too, which was a
yeah, so I did
very
the other
competitive.
military competition against the Royal Military Academy of Canada and Sandhurst, the English Royal Military Academy. So I did the military games against them, which was here, carry this heavy backpack, rucksack, and go until we tell you to stop. And yeah, that prepared me for the army.
You beat me to it. I was going to ask if your Scottish fencing skills were ever going to be employed against the English, and the answer is yes.
Yeah, that's right.
By the time you graduated, what was your record against the midshipmen?
Oh, I don't remember. But we beat them more times than we lost. I can tell you our football record because we were on a good year losing streak. And
You were in school during that like 15-year window when
Yeah.
the Army just could not get right.
Every
yeah,
year,
it was
every
rough.
year they had the Army Navy game, and John was like, "Do you want to come?" And I just thought, "Do I want to go and freeze just for them to lose?" That was the only time I ever said no. I have never been to
Heartbreaking
an Army
losses
Navy.
too. Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of those games were close, if I remember correctly. There
We
were a
like
couple
to
of
say
blowouts.
we like to say statistically, it was a pumpkin.
Sorry, the boss is up.
Yep, our 2 year olds awake. But we said statistically, I think it was Army traditionally loses the football games during the time of war, but tends to pick it right back up during peacetime. I don't know if there was correlation between people, high school football players, not wanting to go to, like we were talking about, going to a place where when you finish up, you will be going to war.
Yeah.
Which isn't very nice to say about Navy because people would go there and during wartime, and they deploy too. But I will always remember. I mean, just I'll poke one of them real briefly. My junior year, I think it was, Navy had a sign that we had first time that memes were really coming out. Navy midshipmen were holding a sign that said, "Hey, watch our a bowl game on ESPN." So a bunch of the West Point cadets made up our own signs that said, "Watch our war on CNN." It made it kind of fun. But
Makes sense.
great rivalry, and I love it. Love it to this day. And I look forward to us starting to win more. I mean, I believe it was 2018 was the first time we'd won in quite a long while I was in Syria. And it's fun. It's fun watching, and I won't speak bad about the man because unfortunately he was killed in the explosion. But the Navy SEAL on our team, Mr. Scott Wirtz, I remember we're sitting there and we were watching the game, and he starts smashing things. I mean, he was angry, and our linguist, Miss Kadir Tahir, kept being like, "Why is he so angry and smashing things?" I'm like, "Because the Navy's losing the football game." And I remember her just being like, "Who cares? It's just a football game." Good life
That's the
lessons,
worst thing you
but
can say.
Yeah.
It's
But
just
it's
a sport.
life.
Yeah.
Okay, so Sam, you're still in school, and John,
Yes.
you're down at lovely, wonderful Fort Benning in the summer, going to school, or to start your
Yep.
military career schooling at airborne school.
Yes.
Was there a thought where you were not going to finish school and you were just going to jump into the full-time spouse? Was that ever
Yep.
something that you considered?
Yeah, so John and I mean, back up a little bit. I mean, halfway through his time at West Point, I was finishing up high school. So my senior year, I told John, I said, John, I have no idea what college I want to go to. I really don't know what I want to do, only because I can't see myself doing teaching. I can't see myself working business stuff, anything like that. I loved art. I loved that was the only class I really liked in high school was like the art classes, the academic classes, the home ec, that type of stuff. I thought I'd what is the point of finishing high school? I don't even want to do this, but I did, of course. I loved the anatomy and physiology classes that I took. I took AP classes for that. I did question. I said, I want to do something medical, but I hate needles, so I don't really want to be a nurse. What do I do? What career path do I choose? And I remember talking to John about this. We had a very serious discussion, and he was helping me find a college to go to locally. And I just said, I just want to get through this and just get done. I don't know what I want to do though. And he said, Sam, you don't have to worry about this. We knew we were going to get married. And he had just said, I'll always take care of you. And okay, John, but I still got to do something with myself. And so I ended up going to a very advanced, very quick dental school because I had a lot of dental work done. I had reconstructive jaw surgery, all that stuff. I fell in love with the dental field, and hi, honey. And so I just said, I think I want to go the route dental. I can take that anywhere. I can do the dental field at military bases, that type of stuff. And so that's the path I decided to take. But of course, at the time, I was just like, but do I go to college for it? Do I do a trade school for it? So we decided, well, if you go to this trade school, you'll be done in 9 months. 9 months after that, it's going to be the time that John's going to be done with West Point. Let's go that route. And so that's the route that I decided to take in May. I'm sorry. So I did do the dental school. I did finish. And of course, as soon as I was done with the schooling, though, a week later, John and I got married.
For the strictly listening audience, you can't see it, but do you want to introduce the dog that's now on camera and the wee child?
This is May.
Yeah, we got a little basset hound, and she ain't little, and she's starved for attention. And then our 2-year-old,
the little one that wants to be on camera.
Yeah, this is our Ellie.
She's our 2-year-old.
She's the boss.
Yeah, she is. They both are. These are girls, and they run the family.
So let's jump forward. Excuse me. Let's jump forward to your first duty assignment. So, and I assume y'all are at that point reunited. You're married. You're reunited. Physically. And
yes.
you go, where's your first duty assignment?
She's a family.
Yes, we. So right after airborne school, so we got married. Like I said, went to airborne school. So that was 3 weeks of fun. She came down, and I think it was the very first time we really did anything together as a married couple, was driving from Fort Benning to Fort Knox, where I in process the basic officer leader course to be an armor officer. We lived there together off and on. So she was finishing up school, just taking care of stuff around the house back in Michigan. So I'd see her on weekends. She would randomly, I'd go out into the field and I'd come back and she'd be in my apartment. I'd be like, what the heck? Surprise. But a great surprise because she knows how to cook. And she's a good person. But first duty station, so after Fort Knox, we packed everything up. And of all things, I bought her a Mini Cooper as a wedding present. So we had a Mini Cooper. We packed up all of our earthly possessions into a Mini Cooper, showing we didn't have anything. And we drove from Flint, Michigan down to Fort Stewart, Georgia in this little itty bitty,
Talk
car.
about a test of a marriage is
That's right.
Just learning how to drive a stick shift with this Mini Cooper. And John's like, why don't you take over as we're getting ready to get into Atlanta?
Oh,
we thought 5 years was going to be hard.
I'm seeing this, or I'm envisioning this cartoonish like road travel map, and there's this tiny car
Oh,
with things just falling off the top and out of it and everything as you guys ping
You remember
pong
the
around the
Goofy
roads.
movie?
Yeah,
Or like
That
wacky
was us.
races. Yeah.
We were Goofy and Max in the Goofy movie.
or any of Chevy Chase's vacation movies, Vegas Vacation, and whatnot. But yeah, so we wind up at Fort Stewart, Georgia, outside of
Okay.
Savannah, with Third
Yep.
Infantry Division.
Yep.
Yep. Sorry.
Go ahead.
Oh yeah, so Third Infantry Division reported to my first duty assignment. Uh, I wanted to be a tanker. I thought tanks were awesome. Loved it during the basic officer leader course. It's going to be a tanker. It's going to a heavy brigade combat team. Yeah, America. Where tanks are. Third Infantry Division. Definitely known for the Thunder Run. So show up. Went to a cavalry regiment where they gave me Humvees, and I was like, those aren't tanks. And they're like, oh well, we got the Diet Coke of tanks, and gave me a Bradley. So we started our wedding off, or our marriage off, at Fort Stewart, and 9 months from the time we arrived there was special time in that our oldest son was born there at Wynn Army Hospital at Fort Stewart. And I want to bring that up because it leads into, I think it was days. It might have. I think it was 2 or 3 days after he was born. I got a call from the battalion, our squadron commander. Kind of one of those. Hey, congratulations on the baby. Thank you, sir. Hey, do you think you could be ready tomorrow to leave for Afghanistan? Wait, what? No. So I got to negotiate with him a little tiny bit. He was like, I'm like, I could be ready in like a month. Let me spend time with the baby. He's like, I'll give you 3 days. I was like, a week? And I think I left like 5 or 6 days after our son was born. She had just gotten out of the hospital. Both of our families were down visiting, helping take care of the baby, and I left for Afghanistan. This is 2012 to 2013, a 9-month deployment.
Where were you?
He went to Afghanistan.
Whereabouts in Afghanistan?
I was in regional command north, and outside of our forward operating base was in a place called Kunduz.
Mm-hmm.
But I was up on the Tajikistan border,
Tajik border,
working with the Afghan border police. We did a lot of their training. That was our partnered force up there, doing drug interdiction. Looking for bad guys crossing the borders, things of that nature.
I mean, that's a good mission for a CAV squadron.
It was a good CAV scout mission. Sitting there on LPOPs and paying attention to who's around.
He had a really good. Well, it was his first platoon too, and had a really good group of guys that he went with. So it made it really difficult for him to leave. But at the same time, I knew he had a good relationship with all of his soldiers that he had to watch over, and it made it, I guess, easy for a first deployment for him to leave. It was a long one. 9 months in Afghanistan, no cell phones, no communication whatsoever. It was a long 9 months, but
back to West Point.
Yeah, and that's kind of what we were so thankful for West Point, though, was establishing that no communication rule that they had. Well, it wasn't even a rule; it was just life that we had at the time. We had no way to talk to each other, but because John left and there was I had no help. I was a new mom. I had no idea what I was doing. I moved back home to Michigan. So of course, first time we finally get somewhere, we move all the way back home. I moved home for the 8 months that he was, 8 of the 9 months he was gone. Our family was both able to step in and help me raise our son Ian, which I had no idea what I was doing. So thankful for it, and so thankful for my parents who opened their doors for us and just said, come on, like, we're in this as a team, we're a family, let's do this, let's get through this first deployment. And it was not, I mean, he wrote letters home a lot, but there was also young families who all that they have ever experienced was the cell phones and being able to call. And they would message me on Facebook, why is my husband not calling me, and why is he not talking to me? And being able to say, hey, listen, it's going to be all right. It's going to be a long week. You'll hear from him eventually. no news is good news though, because you really don't want to hear anything.
Yeah.
Just stand by. They'll message you when they can. But in the meantime, just enjoy life and pray for them. Make sure they're safe. We did a lot of there's a lot of FRG stuff that was going on too. I was not in the FRG at all, but we had a good foundation back home where the group of women that we were in together. I mean, to this day, I'm still very close with that group of women. I think just because that 9 months we were gone, we depended on each other. But it was that eye opening experience as a wife where, I mean, I learned, okay, like John's in charge. He's got this group of guys, but all these other women are going to depend on me for information of what they're doing, where they're at, what's going on. We had to establish that, like, please don't write on Facebook what's happening, all that fun stuff.
Yeah.
But it was a long 9 months. They made it home. Everybody, they had a good deployment, got a lot of work done. But then, of course, John got home from the 9 months, and he met a civil affairs guy on that deployment. And he, as soon as he got home, he goes, "Sam, I hate to break the news to you, but I'm leaving." And I goes, "What? You literally just got home. What do you mean you're leaving?" And he said, "Well, there's this guy that I met. He told me about this civil affairs stuff." And I just thought, what is civil affairs? I've never heard of this. And he was like, "Well, it's a job, like it's a branch of the military where basically they talk to people to get information. It's a whole different style of war." And I just thought, John, okay. And I goes, "Well, you're really good at talking to people. I mean, he's a man that's got a lot of words and he's
So
very
many
good at
words.
communicating with people." And so I said, "Well, you got to talk to people. That sounds like a much better job than what you thought, what we thought being a tanker was going to be like." Because when we got to Fort Stewart, and he goes, "This isn't the tanks I wanted to work on at all. This is not what I wanted to do. But here's a civil affairs job, and I really think that this is something that I could be good at." And I goes, "Well, okay, it's good to see you." And so a month after he got home, he left for North Carolina, did the civil affairs stuff, the selection course, and he said, "I don't think I'm going to get it. They only choose like one out of, or what was it, 10 out of 100 people get to do this job." And I was like, "It's not a very high chance." But I told John, I goes, "John, everything you do though, you excel at. So I'm just going to get it in my mind that this is what we're doing next. You're going to do the civil affairs route. Let's prepare for it." And of course he went, he did it. Um, I don't even remember how long it took, but he called and he said, "Hey, Sam, I was selected." I goes, "Oh, shocker. So now what?" "We're moving." I was, "Oh, great." And so here we are. Our son had just turned a year old now. And it was 2 months. 2 months after he got home from his 9 month deployment, we moved up to Fort Bragg and started the civil affairs journey. And of course, they joke and say, once you're at Fort Bragg, you never leave. And
The
we
center
didn't
of the
leave
universe.
again. So that kind of was the beginning of the end of.
And we will get started on the civil affairs part of your career. But first, let's go ahead and take a break. All right, and we are back with Jon and Samantha Turnbull, and this is their book that they co-authored, 0% Chance. And as far as we know, everything has been cleared by the DoD for discussion because we are going to start getting into some of the incidents in the book. But we're not going to delve too deeply into it because we want everybody to go out and get it and read for themselves in you guys' own words. Fair enough?
And has a really awesome audiobook too. If you don't want to read it,
That's what I did. I did the audiobook and Dan did the physical book
I did
here.
that for all of our Marine friends. I'm just kidding.
They just miss out on the pictures, but
Okay, so while you were in Afghanistan the first time, you met a civil affairs guy who got you interested in it.
Yeah, so the I love telling the story. I was I was in our after as a platoon leader. I was as transitioned out as platoon leader of the most amazing soldiers I ever worked with, and went up to our squadron command. I helped sit on the position, helped out with our S9, so the civil military operations. This individual, and we were working on something. There was one specific project I remember working on. It was a road. We were building a road, trying to build a road out to one of our combat outposts. And over the 9 months, we spent, I mean, Lord knows, about 6 months of it trying to get this road done. How do we do this? Just stumbling along, trying to, reinvent the wheel, so to speak. When I was in the talk one time, had some big bearded guys came in and introduced themselves, and they were this, members under First Special Forces Command, never heard of civil affairs at the time, and talked to their team sergeant, and he kind of asked like what stuff that our S9 was working on. So I mentioned this road, and he goes, "Can I give it a try?" And what's the worst? I mean, we're not going to say no to a little hope. So we've been doing this for 6 months. Within like a week, they had already sent out the advertised for this job, received bids, awarded a nomination, or nominated one of the bids, and had awarded it, and the company had already begun work on it. I've been doing this for 6 months. This guy did it in a week. I'm like, now that's a job I want to do. I want to be that awesome. So decided, I was a first lieutenant at the time. As we were coming back, I dropped my packet for civil affairs assessment and selection, and that's received my orders to report to CAS right as we got back. And so it was just like Samantha said. I showed up and I was like, "Hey, honey, who's the baby? Oh, he's cute, 9 months old at the time." And I'm like, "Well, I gotta go again." And actually went with one of my best friends to the same assessment and selection. A good NCO that I'd met, went to church with. He was like, "Hey, this is the civil affairs, what you can expect, more or less." Did assessment and selection, was selected, first time go around. One of the things I'm very proud of. Made it through assessment and selection to be selected. Came back and told Samantha, was like, "All right, well, we're moving now to North Carolina. We'll figure that out." And once we got there, did more of it was 12 to 18 months, somewhere around then, the qualification course. But the best thing about the qualification course was just about every single night, my head was on my pillow at home with Samantha, and I got to see her just about every single day with weekends off. It was like a civilian job, like a normal job. I got to spend time with my family, and it's the first time we got to really bond as a couple living in southern Fayetteville in North Carolina.
I remember right before before we got to North Carolina, he said, "Sam, I think this is a good move because no matter what, if we go the civil affairs route, if I get this job, you will always be taken care of." And I thought, okay. He's like, no, that's totally different. The unit of guys are very family oriented. Yeah. You'll have nothing you'll ever have to worry about again. Especially with the unit that I'm going to. And I goes, all right. He said that about the cavalry unit. I had a good relationship with all the family members, but he goes, "No, this is going to be totally different." So it's kind of one of those buckle up and see type things, which fast forward, I mean, he was right. And I doubted it for a little bit, and I'm kind of upset that I did that. But in the long run, I mean, it was
worked out. It was
the best decisions he could have made at the time. So, yeah.
And for the sake of irony, the only other thing I'll mention about, so graduated the qualification course, was assigned to the 96th Civil Affairs Battalion. I showed up to Alpha Company and met the commander, and the commander's like, "All right, he's like, we're juggling around a few ideas with teams. We have a few team openings." He's like, "I'd like you to go down to 612, just to meet the team. I think that's where we're going to put you initially." So I walked down, looking at the team numbers on the doors, hit 612, walk in, and who's the team sergeant? Lo and behold, it was the same guy that was in Afghanistan that introduced me to civil affairs. A guy by the name of Tim Boylan.
Nice.
Most random absolutely the most random thing ever. Because I remember seeing him and being like, "I know you," and he's like, "I know you too." And we've maintained, lifelong friends. I mean, we talk.
He's in the book. He's
Yeah,
in one of the pictures.
he's definitely in the book. Crazy, crazy man, but is my introduction to it. And right after that, just to speed it along, so showed up and they're like, "Hey, we need you to go to SEER school." We all know SEER school, how much fun that is. So I left about a week after showing up to the 96th for SEER school. Came home, graduated with honor, and after getting back and trying, stuffing my face full of all the good food
Of everything.
because you're
Bad
hungry.
food too.
You're
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, he came
always
home and he's
hungry.
like, "I want Chinese food," and I was like, "Oh,
I need
what?"
all the food. So got back, walked
All
back
of it.
in to Alpha Company, walked back into my team room, and was informed that I had transitioned teams. They found a better team well, not a better team, but a team where the dynamics would be better for me. A very experienced team sergeant, a great CA. They don't call them NCOs anymore. They're I don't remember what they call them. You guys is you rebrand the names every now and then. The young staff sergeant on the team and a young medic. So this was a transition to
It's civil
civil affairs
reconnaissance
team
NCO.
3. And then as we transitioned, they also handed me my orders for my deployment. So I get back. Hey Sam, I'm got to leave in about a week or two, and that was
Shocker.
first civil affairs deployment. You know, nothing like going from my last one in Afghanistan, planning out with the cavalry regiment to asking team sergeant, so what do you bring? It's like civilian clothes. So you pack your bags, a suit, a tie. Wow, that's the most random thing ever. And I deployed with 1-3 to Jordan. This is 15-16. Uh, and if y'all want to discuss any of these other things, we can. But I can jump through it. So 15-16 to Jordan, came back home. 16 pushed out with 1-3 again to Lebanon. Uh, and it was just for like the PDSS. Came back home, had orders. Then it was a solo deployer uh, to Jordan in 17 or 16, 17. Came home again, a single deployer to UAE. Um, we did UAE and Kuwait. Made it into Kuwait for I think it was a month or two before coming back, and then getting picked up in another more or less selection right before going to Iraq in September of 2018. So just jumped on the special operation for Special Forces Command deployment cycle. Boom, 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 gone, 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 gone. All the while, left my wife at home with our young son, who was kindergarten, first grade, second grade. Um, and during this all, we also moved from Fayetteville up to Spring Lake. Found a beautiful house on 10 acres with a pond. So we moved. But this was kind of Samantha's introduction into the civil affairs. When we moved, it wasn't us. We didn't have to do anything on our own. There were always 20 to 30, friends, soldiers, teammates that
When he
showed up
says,
with their
"Oh,
families to pack everything
we'll
up.
move everything by ourselves," I was like, "Why would we do that? Why this extra work?" He goes, "Trust me, it'll be a lot faster." And of course, he was right. All these guys show up with their
I was
trucks,
what?
and yeah, you were right.
Oh, nice. I never get that.
If I'm right about something, my wife says that I'm not wrong.
That's
not
right.
wrong.
Yeah, you're right, but there's a better answer. But
Yeah,
so we got to see people cared, like genuinely cared. They're like, hey, let's, and it wasn't just moving. It wasn't just people showing up, stuffing stuff into boxes. Like we had barbecues, we grilled out, we had some because we moved out to 10 acres, as I mentioned in Spring Lake. That my team set up an epic gun range, so we had we did some shooting, team bonding, having fun. But the whole time, everything was focused around that, the nucleus of the family, like making sure our families were all taken care of, and not just our families, but our families. All of our wives knew who each other were. They could call on each other for anything and everything, and it was. That dynamic was so fantastic because, as we'll get into after the explosion, it came into like, what do I do? Who do I talk to? well, I don't know, but maybe so and so's wife, Trey's wife might know, or Tim's wife might know. Let me call one of them. And uh, so it was so fantastic. Those, I mean, deployment, but we really built up a good, family within the military, but then, the extended family, but then also it demonstrated, the impact that an FRG, so family readiness group, can have when it's cohesive and, we're all working together.
But it was an interesting lifestyle though, to the point that like we every single weekend I think we had somebody at our house at the gun range
Comparing
shooting.
beard lengths, it's all
And
good.
I mean, we had
Yeah.
cookouts every weekend, and I mean, everything and birthday party. If it wasn't people at our house for a shooting day or a cookout, it was for a birthday party or anything. I mean, we loved our house where we were at. It was kind of hard to find. We always joke that the UPS man could never find us. But the people in the unit knew where we were at. They knew the gun range. They knew, hey, if we want to just go out, even if Sam and John aren't home, we'll just send them a text to let them know that we're out there. And so, I mean, we always had people out at our house, which was very special. And it was definitely not the normal military lifestyle where, I mean, commanders like, don't fraternize with your teams. And
Yeah.
that's kind of a touchy subject where John and I were just like, no, this is who you deploy with. This is your family for the next 6 to 9 months, depending on how long you're going to
Right.
be there for. We have to know each other. We have to get along with each other, and we have to know where we're at, what we're doing all the time. There was never that stop for a minute. I mean, it's even like to us, we thought about like people in the police force or firefighters.
We understood that, like, to be a leader, you do not have to be, and you should not try to be friends, like buddy chums, friends with your soldiers. But that doesn't mean that you can't be family.
Right.
And I mean, family was like the best way of describing it. Like, we, as a team, we built up we instead of a team, it was a family. Um, which I love
To the
saying
point,
that
like
because we were
everybody we knew.
close, and I mean, you don't always have to like your family, and we didn't always like each other on the team, but I mean, we respected each other, and we were able to be a cohesive unit,
Yeah.
and it was awesome.
Well, it comes down to trust, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Perfect. Okay, so tell us about your other selection to the point that you can.
Um, I don't know what I can really talk about it.
Yeah.
So the other one, the big one was going. I wanted to try out for one of our more or less the next step up from. I mean, a unit that still fell under First Special Forces Command. So it wasn't much of a step; it was more just a lateral step. So went to selection, and at the end of the selection, I made it all the way through, and I was really excited about it because I got to sit down with the commander of the unit, and he told me that I did a great job, and that I would be a great leader in any unit, and that I should continue to be a great leader in civil affairs. So I was like, wait, so that was I was a non-select for this one, which was really difficult because you go through and you do everything, and you walk a metric crap ton of miles, and I was lost the entire time, but it's okay. Only to be told that go back to civil affairs and keep doing stuff there. Only to when I got back to civil affairs, that same commander called me and said, "Hey, we've had not a change of mind or heart, but we would be interested if you would come and uh, you know come onto one of the teams that go train up for this, and we have a deployment coming up, but we're going to deploy you as a combat service support element with possible follow-on missions once you're over there." So long and short of it is, I went to selection, was a non-select at the end of it, but they pick you. They don't pick the best and the top notch people. What they're looking for is people to fit in specific niches. Like, all right, we need somebody that has these capabilities. I had a really good friend that just went through selection, and at the end of it, she was told, they're like, hey, you're not the best. However, we need a somewhat senior E6. We want, a capabilities, language capability at this level. We want them to be medically qualified, so to go through the special operation medical course. So it was SOCAMs, uh, and we need this. We need an IQ of this, like very specific. So when I went through, I didn't meet any of the criteria of what they were looking for. But then that position opened up at the last minute, and I sat down with our battalion commander and was like, "Hey, this unit's looking for a quote unquote civil affairs advisor, a team to go. I would like to lead a team. At the time I was the civil affairs planning team, the Cap T chief, as a as a senior captain. Got the blessing from them. I mean, not that 96 could have said anything about it, in my opinion, but and that's what set me on my way to Iraq for September 2018. Did that kind of make sense? Answer your question?
It does. Did you already know that you were going to have
talking about, because I don't like being a failure. I mean, we all like being, macho, and I wanted to be chosen for being the best, the brightest, the literally quote the West Pointer from Men in Black, from the best of the best of the best, sir.
Mm-hmm.
But
I think the hardest part of this deployment, though, that he was getting ready to go on, was that I asked him, I said, okay, who's going with you? Thinking like, his friend, he had a friend named Trey who he went on, what, 2 or 3 deployments on? And I was, oh, is Trey going with you this time?
Yeah.
No. And so, I mean, he was like, Sam, you don't know anybody going on this deployment except our friend Mike. And he said, Mike's really the only guy that you know. And I was like, okay. So I was like, well, I better get a hold of his wife, because she's going to be my support through this deployment, of course. And at the time, they were moving into a new house. So John goes, well, what better way to meet a wife than let's go help them pack up their house and move? And I was like, what? I don't know who she is. Like, you want me to go pack up her house? And so, I mean, we did that right before the deployment. And I think it was not even a week later they left. And so, of course, Mike, his wife, I said, well, we're in this together. I don't know what type of deployment this is going to be, because I'm not used to this. I'm not used to John going to Iraq with a group of people who I don't know. So this is going to be a learning experience for both of us. And her and I both were like, okay, let's do this.
And they were in the dark about everything. I mean,
yeah,
not just them. I mean, we kind of all were. I sat down with the unit's commander, command sergeant major, and the operations officer for a brief. And he's like, here's what, to plan for, just for initial planning. I mean, like what to bring. We had a civil affairs presence in Iraq at the time, through, I believe it was the 98th Civil Affairs Battalion, a young major that was there. But there was very little contact between her and I. So, we were told, like, that, this is what you guys are going to do. This is what, the reason why John's going. And I got to bring the team with me, but we were not able to brief our families on it. Besides, this is how long we're going to be, the real basic stuff. So they were in the dark, because we couldn't tell them what the mission was. We couldn't tell them, I mean, literally couldn't even tell them where we were going. We told them Iraq, and we knew it was somewhere up north.
Being a wife, when you hear Iraq, you're just like, ugh, all right, well, that's not fun. This is not going to be a good deployment. Because, of course, every deployment he went on prior to that, I was like, you're just on vacation, sending me pictures of you in Aqaba or Turkey and different places like that. I was like,
floating in the Dead Sea.
Thanks, John. Like, enjoy your vacation. And so that's what his deployments felt like to me, because when all you do is get pictures of him floating in the Dead Sea or him hiking up different mountains, I'm like, all right, well, I'm busy. I have our 6-year-old. I have to run him to school. We have to do the school stuff, sports stuff, all that stuff. And it was by myself, and helping families back home, and the wives, the spouses at home, and church, and different activities at church that we were involved in. I was very active in our church at the time. And very, very busy. It kept me from being bored. But this deployment, he goes, all right, we're going to Iraq. And I'm going, oh no. Okay, John. Well, let's do this. So as the day that he was supposed to be leaving, um, we took our son to school and got him to a different part of the bay, like the compound. It was a very top secret place that he was leaving from. And I'm going, this is different. Like,
Yeah.
usually
Yeah.
I'll just take him to Raleigh Airport and adios, see you in 4 or
Yeah.
5 months. This was not. It was drop him off at the gate. You can't go past a certain point. And so for me, I was like, this is a serious deployment, isn't it, Johnny? He goes, yeah. He goes, I'll see you in 4 months. And I goes, 4 months? And that's all he said. It's a 4-month deployment. It's going to be quick. This is going to be the quickest deployment we've ever had. It'll be easy. And I usually on the deployments, I would go home, spend time with family. But 4 months, I goes, I can't even get home and come back in 4 months. So forget that noise. I'm not doing it this time.
Yeah.
Staying home. I'm going to take our son Ian to school. We're going to focus on each other. We're going to have a lot of mom and son time. And so then he left. And then to kind of break up the sadness of it, I told our son, I goes, you want to go to Barnes & Noble and I'll let you pick out a book or something. And yep, let's do that. So we did that. And as we're at Barnes & Noble,
God bless our Air Force.
John calls and he goes, I need packed back up. Do you remember how to get here? And I was like, what do you mean you need picked back up?
Yeah.
We said our goodbye. Nope. Got to come get me.
Airplanes broke.
Airplane broke 3 times before this deployment. And finally, the last time, I was, if you don't leave, you're going to miss the 4 months at this point. And so, I mean, it was very, very weird saying goodbye to him for this deployment because it was a very rushed, it was late in the evening. I said, I got to get Ian home. We got to get him to bed. Just you do you. We'll see you in a couple months. Gave each other a quick hug, goodbye. And for some reason, I remember looking back at John and just saying, this is going to be the last time I see my husband. I don't know why I felt that way. I don't know if John felt the same way, but I remember taking a good look at him as he walked away. And
I thought you were going to have to come back later that evening. The Air Force would be like, yeah, another thing broke. We're going to stay here another couple days.
But it was definitely a different feel, and it was a different goodbye. It was, everything about it was really hard. And there was the continuous, you're not leaving, you're not leaving, you're not leaving, even to the point, I mean, a lot of people, they fast forward, John, before he left, he put his handprint on our door, which I was like, what are you doing that for? And he goes, just because. He goes, that way every day, Ian, he's old enough to understand I'm gone. But he painted his hand black and slapped it on our door, and underneath wrote, love you, bud, Dad, and signed it. And every day he told our son, he said, before you guys leave, before you guys go anywhere, high five the door. And that's kind of my way of like, have a good day type thing. And so it was really special. But of course, him doing this stuff, it of course set in my heart, and I'm going, there's something different about this deployment. Please don't go. And when the plane kept breaking down, I told him, I goes, John, please don't go. What can you do to just stay home this one time? I think you should let somebody else do this. And I'll never forget, you go, Sam, I can't do this. This is my job. I have to go. When am I ever going to have an opportunity to help people like this? And to be able to do a job like this is kind of a once in a lifetime thing in the military, and I got to go do it. And of course, being a wife, I said, nope, understand. You got to go. Let's do this. Let's do this 4-month deployment and put it behind us. Hurry up and get home. So that was the start of the deployment.
Yeah. Did you know, John, that you would have a very, very diverse team that you would be mostly meeting up with in country? Like, did you kind of have a pretty good idea of what you were going to be dealing with?
Yes and no, not as diverse as it ended up being. I did know that, so when we got there, I knew we would have our Cap T being made up of, our Army guys, but everybody within the 96th. And it was my first time more or less being placed in charge of our intelligence cell, so our S2 folks. S2, I had our targeting. I never remember which one the chief is. I think it's the targeting officer is the chief, and the targeting chief is the officer. Because why would it make sense? So I had a targeting officer with me, being one of my best friends, Chief Reese, and then just a hodgepodge of smaller other guys. Plus, they brought in uh, individuals from the unit to like augment us, even though we were augmenting them. But before that, after like we were there for a week, it took about a week of us just doing what I felt like was routine civil affairs things. We would get words from the teams on the ground regarding missions that they were doing, and we were able to back brief the commander, being like, the civil affairs teams are doing this, or your teams are doing X, Y, and Z, and this is the impact on local infrastructure, the local government, just the people. So we did that for a week, and after a week, that's when the commander sat me down and was like, "Hey, John, all right, we're going to we put together this team, place northeast Syria. Well, for us, it was the northwest. I've got another team. Need you to fly out there. Need your capabilities, and just the mindset, the civil affairs mindset, to go there, wage war against the ISIS. Rely on your team." And that's when I found out that this team that he put together was that diverse. I mean, having three special forces uh, soldiers on it, two psyops. I had two individuals from the Navy, two sailors, naval intelligence, and myself as the civil affairs guy, as the team lead. This idea, this cross-functional idea that was developed under First Special Forces Command, and just overall the Special Operation Command put together, and it was, I loved it. I thought it was fantastic. Plus, having our cultural advisor, so to speak, our interpreter or translator, Jasmine. She's affectionately known as Jasmine. Her real name was Gadir, and but relying on these people, like, hey, we're putting together, we got to go and do some stuff. Like, he wants us to more or less defeat ISIS. How do we do that in our area? And put our heads together, and that's when we kind of jumped into our three major lines of effort. Restoring power, medical infrastructure, and education were our three major lines of effort that we were successful at. All the while working with the local government, the Syrian Democratic Council, which ours was the Civil Administration of Manbij, also known as the CAM. But working with them, and then just being co-located with Fifth Special Forces Group, one of their ODAs, and it was more or less, it was a dream team, and we had some of the greatest pipe hitters in the military all together, and some big brains, people that knew stuff. I mean, our the chief petty officer on our team, Mrs. Shannon Kent, she spoke, I don't know. I mean, I would say a dozen languages. That's extreme, but knowing her, she might have spoken a dozen languages, at least 5 or 6.
I think it was like
As far as, I mean, she was funny because she spoke better Arabic than our translator did. The two young ladies would get into fights over dialogue and what form of Arabic they're using: Iraqi, Syrian, Levant, Levantine,
Right.
Egyptian. It was amazing. So yeah, put together this team, and we got to work right away. Once I did my info into Syria.
Okay. So again, we don't want to get too much into the detail because we want people to go out and get the book and, listen or read it themselves. But you guys were able to do some amazing stuff over there and really make significant impacts in those communities and
Yeah, sure.
the war against ISIS. So take us to your injuries.
Okay, so and then just one step back, we're talking about the amazing things we did. Showing the people the three reasons why I showed up. Went to the army. I wanted to defend freedom. We were doing that every step of the way by opening up schools for girls to go back to school, by making enhancing the capability of the medical infrastructure, restoring power. We wanted to promote justice, encouraging people. You guys don't have to be oppressed, don't have to live under tyranny. Stand up and do it. Trust in your government, which was providing legitimacy to the local government. All this, and then while protecting, the American way of life, taking the fight to their gates, not bringing the fight to our own gates here in America. So all this came to a head, January 16th, and having my wife here. Well, I do have to say that January 15th, I did something that I think it helps. That helps to the story, but commanders will be a little twitchy about it. I remember texting her and being like, "Hey, babe, we're going into Manbij tomorrow. Found a possible, we found where ISIS is operating. I have to get in there." What?
So the day
sorry.
before, like the
January 15th.
January 15th, he had texted me and he said, "Hey, I know I'm supposed to be on the plane home today. FYI, I'm not coming home until April now." And I was like, "Time out. You're supposed to be coming home today. You are supposed to be on the plane. What do you mean you're not coming home?" And he said, "I'm extending my time here." And I remember being so mad. I just thought, what? Why? Why are you doing this? This really is dumb. Like, don't do this, Jon. You're supposed to be in Iraq. You're not in Iraq. Now you're in Syria. And I said, what are you doing? I don't understand what is so important over there that you think it's more important than coming home and spending time with me and Ian, because I was being selfish. And he just said, "Sam, I'll never be able to talk about what I am doing here. I'll never be able to tell you what's going on, but please know that this is such an important job, and I will never, ever be able to help this many people ever again." And I mean, what we are doing here is just one day maybe I can talk about it, but for now I cannot. And he said, "But I don't know why I'm going to tell you this, but ISIS is here in the area that we're in. And I don't want you to worry because there's video cameras set up. We know where they're at. We're trying to target where they are exactly. That way we can get rid of them here." And I thought, oh boy. First of all, you're not even supposed to be here in Syria. I told you I didn't want you going to Syria. And now you're telling me ISIS is there. And I'm like, this is why you're not supposed to tell me anything. And so, of course, my nerves just skyrocket. And of course, I couldn't say anything to anybody. I couldn't just call one of my old military wives and be like, "Here's what's going on. Can you believe this? Jon's doing this, this, and this," because I really didn't know what he was doing. But just him saying ISIS is here was enough. And I knew enough that I said, okay, this is really important. But you're also a civil affairs guy. I know you're not wearing your uniform that you're supposed to be, like any other deployment, you'd be wearing your helmet and all this protective stuff. And I'm going, okay, this just got serious. But you're supposed to be coming home. And so, of course, I was not happy with him. And I texted him and I said, jokingly, "Just put your helmet on. Please be safe. Talk to me when you can." Because at that point I was, I'm just so mad. If I keep talking to him, I'm going to say something I'm going to regret. So don't do it. Bite your tongue and just accept the fact that this is the military. You know that this happens. Accept it. Just keep doing what you're doing. And so, of course, then Jon, he told me a little bit about what they were doing, but not much. And he just said, "But know that tomorrow I'm going to give you a call because we're doing a very important mission tomorrow. I'll call you when I go on our lunch break." And it's always at the time that our oldest was going to school. And so I just told him, I said, "It's okay. Just call me on the way to school tomorrow. Just let me know you're doing okay. Let me sleep on this because I'm really mad." And so he said, "No, I agree." And so that's what happened. The next morning, though.
Yeah. But I do have to say, I was supposed to go home on January 15th. The civil affairs guys that I deployed with, they all did go home. Mm-hmm. The chief, the S2 section, the 96 guys all flew home. They had already ripped out. I don't remember with who, but they had made it home. They were home to the point where they were back on Bragg, back at the our 96 battalion headquarters, going through all this stuff when I went out on my mission. Before I went on the mission, I sent her a quick text message telling her like, "Hey, I'm going into this town called Manbij. We've identified the threat, and we're going to go handle it. We have to do everything. Just kind of real briefly. Um, love you. Don't worry. God's got this. Everything will be okay." And that's when I went on the mission that, according to Department of Defense, it was, I'm going to do air quotes, routine combat patrol. Uh, we were outside. We parked outside of a restaurant that I do have to say, if I can, note that not CNN, but the news, mainstream media had reported, and I believe it was also reported in Stars and Stripes, reported incorrectly that we had gone to this restaurant. The report was that we'd gone there multiple times. It was kind of routine to go there. Uh, I want to clear the air and say that it was not routine to go there. We had been there before, but we didn't go there. It wasn't a pattern of life. We
Right.
made
Yeah.
sure to not do that. I mean, as we know in the military, I mean, that's especially the leaders. You don't want to set up a pattern of life, that way you can be targeted. So the news was wrong. It wasn't something that we did all the time. But we parked out in front of this restaurant. It's called the Palace of Princesses. Umara. I don't even remember. Kasra Umara. Whatever in Arabic. My Arabic is really bad. But we parked there, and we went on the deployment. And once again, so we had this not deployment, on this mission. We had the Special Forces Chief John Farmer, was second highest ranking to me. Then we had Chief Petty Officer Shannon Kent and her more or less PSD, Mr. Scott Wirtz, who was the Navy SEAL. We had three other Special Forces soldiers with us, two intelligence individuals, and their Bravo. And so we went on this, and then Miss Tahir, our interpreter Jasmine, was with us. So we went on the mission, came back, finished up the mission. We rallied out in front of our vehicles. I had in place security overwatch on us on the top floor of the restaurant. At the very end I did a quick patrol brief. During the patrol brief, I pulled in our internal security, so all Americans, our overwatch position, pulled them in, left the Syrians providing the overwatch and security, the cordon for us, the Syrian forces that we were working with. It was very quickly, within a minute or two of the patrol brief, which only would have taken a minute or two. That's when an ISIS fighter had been able to make it past our outer defenses, the cordon, so to speak, of Syrians, came in, infiltrated into our group, and detonated a suicide vest standing between Chief John Farmer and Chief Shannon Kent. In the explosion, which we get, I get really big into it in the book. So I encourage anybody that wants to know about it, read about it in the book. But I can say, in this explosion, 4 Americans lost their lives, and it was Chief John Farmer, Chief Shannon Kent, Mr. Scott Wirtz. He was Petty Officer Second Class, as a former Navy SEAL, now a DoD civilian, and our non-combatant interpreter Jasmine, Miss Gadir Tahir. All 4 lost their lives. I was gravely injured, losing my right eye, multiple shrapnel wounds. If you want a gruesome thought of it, literally, like, the majority of my face was removed. I was blown to the ground, wedged underneath the vehicle, and then two of our Special Forces soldiers were injured also. Within the matter of just a few minutes, those 2 guys plus the 1 individual, we had 1 Special Forces soldier who was not injured. All 3 of them were able to get up and start doing triage, seeing who was who. They called up for QRF and informed everybody about the troops in contact. During this, also, some of the Syrians had called their version of 911, and ambulances began arriving. And we were, that began our medical evacuation. Our team went to first the hospital, at which time the special forces combat medic, the Delta, had arrived, and I believe that was when he took charge, began ordering around how to package us up and get us prepared for American medical evacuation. At which time a helicopter did land, and of all people in this helicopter, it was the unit's commander, the guy that had sent me into, or to Manbij, into Syria, that had called me on the phone when I was back at Fort Bragg and asking me to uh, come and do this. So he arrived. He was on a mission with, of all people on the helicopter, they had a flight surgeon and multiple nurses or medics with them. So they began getting us ready. But this was, in the middle of the day in Syria. But this was about 6 o'clock in the morning, Eastern Standard Time. So I'll kick it to Sam. She doesn't like talking about this part, but her part is the most important, I think, in the story.
So the morning of, I, of course, always was expecting John's phone call because he tried to make it a priority during his lunchtime because from the days of West Point, we now had cell phones, and he had good service where he was at. And he said, I'll try calling you guys before I go. You drop Ian off at school. And every morning we would FaceTime each other, and John would pray over Ian and just say, have a good day at school, bud. And that was really the only time of the day that we got to talk as a family. So he made it a priority to do that every day, which was awesome. Because by the time Ian got out of school, John was getting ready to go to bed. So that was 7 a.m. was the time that we got to talk to each other. And that morning, though, was totally different because the morning of, at 6 a.m., I always set an alarm for 6:30. And at 6 o'clock, my phone is just going off like crazy. And I'm going, what on earth is happening? And why is my alarm hasn't even gone off yet? What's going on? And I remember sitting up in bed that day, and in our bathroom, we had a window that faced to the east of the house, and the sun was shining directly into the room on me. And I was like, well, the sun's bright, first of all. And what is happening? Because my phone's going crazy. The sun's shining in my face. Like, just let me sleep for the next 30 minutes before the alarm goes off. And I grabbed my phone, saw the time, and I goes, well, that's not John calling. What is going on? And I had this app on my phone that a friend of mine had said, download this app because it'll tell you, like,
News.
Anywhere that you click it, you can set a pin for it, and it'll give you the latest news for that area. And she said, why don't you do it where John's at? That way, any news that goes off, you'll kind of know what's going on, get a heads up of what John's doing, which I kick myself for having this app now, though. But she said, no. You know what?
Seemed like a good idea at the time.
It did. I goes, it's kind of like Facebook. It'll just tell me what's going on. And a lot of around that time, it was explosion in Aleppo. I goes, well, he's kind of close to Aleppo, but not really, just far enough away. And so it would kind of give you an idea of what was going on there. But I was like, I should probably delete this thing. But all it's doing is causing me a little bit of anxiety, and I don't need that. And it was my phone going off, and it was banging like mad because I had it set for Manbij, Syria, where John was at. And I woke up to my phone with this notification saying explosion in Manbij, and my heart sunk instantly because I was like, well, John just told me last night he's going to Manbij. And then as I'm reading that, I scroll up a little more, and it said explosion in Manbij, explosion, multiple troops have been killed, many service members from the U.S. And I'm going, time out. I know for a fact where John is at. Everybody just left. And the only people that are left there is John's team because they were all moving out. It was the withdrawal at the time. And so I thought, oh boy, this is not good. And I, of course, then scroll a little more and there's this video, and it's the video of the explosion that John was in. Thank you, security cameras. And so I see this explosion, and my heart just instantly started beating out of my chest. And I X'd out of the app, and I thought, okay, he's going to be calling me, but I'm going to beat him to it because I'm going to call him. And so I called his phone, and it instantly went to voicemail. And I thought, okay, this is not a good time for you not to be answering your phone, John.
Yeah.
Call again, voicemail. Call again, voicemail. And so then I said, well, I'm just going to send him a message on Signal. We were using Signal at the time. And I sent him a message. I said, please tell me that you are okay. And whenever he would see it, there's a little blue check mark underneath of it saying that it was red. And I said, all you gotta do is wait for these blue check marks. Even if he can't reply, I'll see that he saw it. That's all my heart needs. And it stayed gray. And I'm going, this is not funny. This really is not funny. Text him like crazy. I said, John, please, please, please answer your phone. Please tell me you're okay. Please tell me you were not in this explosion. And I got no word whatsoever. So then I call his friend Mike. I called his wife, the one who I helped move before the deployment, and I said, Rebecca, please, please tell me that Mike has heard from John today. And she goes, what? I don't know. What's going on? And I said, I'm sorry it's so early in the morning. Mike's still probably in Syrian time. He's got to still be talking to John. Please tell me that he has talked to him today. And she goes, no, we're just waking up. Like, what is going on? And so I said, well, let me talk to Mike. And she goes, well, he's at work right now. He left early. I'm just waking up. He just left for work because he's got to get all of his equipment and stuff from the deployment. And I said, well, can you please have him call me because I don't have his phone number? And she goes, okay, yeah, sure. And so Mike then called me right away and he said, Sam, what's going on? And I said, I don't know, but there's been an explosion where John's at, and I'm pretty sure he's been in it. And he said, what? Like, why would you know this before anybody else? You're not supposed to find anything out like this, Sam. And I said, I don't know. My heart's just beating out of my chest. Please tell me that you can get a hold of him. And he goes, well, let me try giving him a call. And so then he hung up and he goes, but Sam, please don't worry. John's going to be okay. He goes, John's different than everybody else. And you just got to trust that he's going to be okay because you cannot be worrying like this. And I goes, all right, I'll try my best. And so by then, 7:00, I goes, Ian, come on. You got to wake up. Don't ask questions. I'm in a bad mood today. Just get your stuff. We got to get ready for school. I threw a lunch together for him real quick, and that's really all I remember of the morning. But then got in the car, and he goes, Mommy, why are you in such a bad mood? And for a 6-year-old to say that, I just stopped, and I goes, Ian, I'm just not having a good morning. I can't get a hold of Daddy, and it's just really worrying me. And he goes, well, it's okay. He'll call us when we get to school. And I said, well, I know, but I think he's just really busy today. And so then, of course, having the faith of a 6-year-old, I wish I had that, but at the time I
Faith
didn't.
like a child. Yeah.
How about we turn on the radio just to get our minds off of stuff? So I flipped it onto the Christian radio station because at the time I just said, God, I need every part of you to step in right now. Just take over my life. And flipped it on the Christian radio station, and there was a song called Thy Will that was on, and it's basically Thy Will Be Done. And at that moment I said, this has to be my prayer for the rest of the day until I hear anything whatsoever is, God, your will be done. And I remember sitting in the car, and I just got this overwhelming feeling that John was gone. And I felt so alone. And I just remember just saying, you know what, God, if no matter what, today's going to be a really hard day, not only for me, but for John, if John's alive, because at that moment I knew, I just said, I'm going to be a widow the rest of my life, and I'm not ready for this, and I don't know what to do right now. And for John, though, I said, you know what, God, please just spare my husband's life right now because I'm not ready to say goodbye. I didn't get to say goodbye. I'm mad at my husband still for being in Syria when he's not supposed to be there. He's supposed to be home. And
Right.
I had all these thoughts and I said, God, this isn't fair. You didn't let me say goodbye. And I said, I've lived my life a Christian my whole life. My dad was a pastor. I mean, we met at church camp just for once. Show me that you exist and show me that, just give me a little bit of something that John's going to be okay. And that's when that song came on. And um, of course, then I put it in my heart and I just said, no, you cannot be negative like this. You have to trust that John is going to be okay. But in my mind, I know it was God speaking to me, and he said, you have to be stronger than what you are right now, though, because I know you can do this. And John is going to get the worst news of his life because he's okay, but the entire team is gone. And you have to be the person to be strong enough for your husband. And I mean, I still get goosebumps thinking about it. It's just I cannot explain anything about that morning except that God took over in that moment and he answered my prayer because um, Rebecca then had called me back and she said, Sam, John or Mike has not heard from John, but you need to not go back home. And I thought, what? Not go home? Like, I haven't even showered yet. Let me take a shower first. And she goes, no, okay, go shower, but meet me for lunch because you need to get out of your house and you can't be worrying like this all day. And I thought, oh, last thing I want to do is eat. And so she said, no, just come on, let's go. Let's meet at Panera Bread or something. It's not much. You can get a cup of soup or something, but you got to eat today. And so I said, well, you're right. I do. I got to eat. I got to be strong for myself. But, I know what's going on. So don't have any secrets, please. And she goes, no, no, I understand. Like, no big deal. She knew what had happened because she talked to her husband.
Right.
And I met her at the restaurant. She gave me a big hug and she goes, Sam, this sucks. Like, we haven't heard from John. Like, what's going on? And she was really playing it off as like, I don't know what's going on. And she got a call from Mike and she goes, hold on, my phone's ringing. I'll be right back. And she went outside and I'll never forget sitting at the table. And I got that feeling again of, oh my gosh, it's John. He's gone. Had that feeling of, I'm going to be a widow. How do I do this? And she came back in and she goes, whew, okay. I could answer the phone at the table. I don't know why I didn't. And she said, it was just Mike. And he just said, you guys can go back home. There's no big deal. They're still trying to get a hold of John, but there's a blackout. And so there's no way to communicate at this point. And so she said, why don't we just go back home and we'll figure this. We'll just wait at your house now. And I said, good, because I have to go get Ian from school. And she goes, no, 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 you don't have to worry about Ian. We'll get you home. And you got somebody else who could pick Ian up today. And I just thought, why? Like, why can't I go get my son? Why can't I make this as normal as possible? And she said, well, why don't we go to Dairy Queen? Because I'm really hungry for a brownie. And I'm going, Rebecca, like, there's something you're not telling me, and I don't like how you're acting, so please knock it off. And
sorry.
and so we ended up going to Dairy Queen, and as we walked into Dairy Queen, she grabbed my hand and pulled me in the bathroom. She goes, I gotta go to the bathroom. And I goes, what? And she goes, I got a stomach ache. And I goes, well, I don't want to be in the bathroom with you. Like, I'll just wait out here. And she goes, no, 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 come in. And I just will never forget. We got in the bathroom and she goes, Sam, I don't know how you've known what has been going on all day. There's no explanation for this whatsoever. But you can't tell anybody because I'm going to get in so much trouble if I tell you this. But John was in that explosion. And I goes, what? And I goes, well, I knew this, but why couldn't you just tell me that? And she goes, no, like, you don't understand. John's passed away already twice. And they brought him back to life somehow. And she goes, but he's the only one of three who survived, and he's not doing good. And I goes, what? And I fell against the wall, just sat down, and in the Dairy Queen bathroom of all places, and I goes, this is not how it's supposed to be. And
But that also is sorry, to cut you off real quick. But just for everybody that's not familiar with casualty notification uh, within the military. So I mean, there's step by step that you have to do. Why they hadn't said anything was Mike. So Chief Reese was sitting in the conference call. They'd pulled in every unit to that was involved from Fifth Special Forces Group, the Civil Affairs Battalion, and they were hung up with DIA, Defense Intelligence Agency, because of Mr. Scott Wirtz and Chief Kent. They didn't exactly know that they didn't have. I mean, I guess one of the good things is they don't. I mean, they didn't have to report that often killed in action. They're service members, plus they were civilians. So they're trying to figure this out, how to do this, and so they had to go through and notify all the casualties or all the killed in action first, and then once they had done that, then they started going through the individuals that were wounded in action, myself and the other two. But myself was unique in that, I mean, I was medevaced from Manbridge, from the hospital, taken out of the hospital. It had taken about 5 hours to get me onto a helicopter. I flew to another American hospital in Syria. I was there for, I think, less than an hour before they called in a follow-on medevac to Iraq. And about 8 hours after the explosion, so about the time Samantha's uh, in Dairy Queen, they knew the 96 had known that I was alive, but that I had legally died twice. One of the times was on the medevac to Iraq. The flight surgeon, even wrote in my medical chart a time of death, but they were able to do CPR on me and stabilize me till we got to the hospital. So I say all this not to talk about how awesome I am and I can beat death. I mean, it wasn't me; it was God doing God things. But to say they were worried that they would come and tell Sam. They'd be like, "Hey, John was in the explosion and he's injured," and then their phones are ringing, be like, "John's dead." They didn't want to have to
Yeah.
do that, so they were waiting for me to either stabilize
Yeah.
or for me to pass away before they could notify. So they kept the process took quite a long while. I think it was a total of about 10 hours before
Yeah.
um, our unit's commander finally was just like, "Everybody stop." And he's like, "Have you guys notified Turnbull's family?" "Nope." Like, because we don't know if he's going to live or die. And he's like, "Go notify his family that he's alive and that,
This
you
was
know,
at the point, though,
yeah."
that Rebecca um, told me in the bathroom, and she said, John's alive, but we got to get you home because Fort Bragg's on their way to your house. And I goes, well, what is taking so long? Like,
Yeah.
here, I've
Yeah.
known about this all day, and by now it was 2 o'clock in the afternoon. I goes, I got to get Ian from school, though, and I know Shock took over because I said, well, I got to go get Ian. And she goes, no, you don't. Like, we've already got it set up. Somebody else is getting Ian from school. And it was that moment that, looking back now, I heard in my head John say, it's going to be okay because you're going to be taken care of no matter what. No matter the circumstance, this unit's going to come together and they're going to help. And when I felt so extremely helpless, and I felt literally it was an out of body experience that people talk about, where they're like, I was not in control of my actions, nothing. And I thought, how do I even drive my car home right now? Because I don't know how to do this. I forgot how to drive everything. And I said, I got to call my parents, though. And the worst thing, I had to call John's parents. I'm going, his mom's going to have a heart attack. Why do I have to do this? And I got in the car and I called John's dad and I said, do not turn on the TV. You need to get home right away to Sandy, my mother in law. And I said, John has been in a terrible accident and I'm not sure what has happened, but as of right now, he may not make it. And my father in law, he, of course, cried. Um, and sorry.
Don't apologize.
that was probably the hardest moment.
Yeah.
For everything was telling his dad what had happened and not having the answers for it, but knowing in my heart that Jon was going to be okay. Um, I know it was just God talking to me and saying, be strong, be strong, be strong. I was a totally different person than I am now. I'm totally emotional now. But in that moment, I was a different person. And I was able to call his dad and tell him, hey, he's going to be okay. You just have to trust that. Um, and then I hung up with him and I called my dad. And I said, hey, Dad, you're going to hear this on the news before anybody else, but you're going to hear it from me first. Um, Jon's been in an explosion and he's lost his whole team. And somehow he has survived it. And I don't know how, but he's fighting for his life right now. And I really just can't be alone. Can you please come down here? And my dad said, say no more. Just don't hang up the phone. And he put me on hold for a minute and he said, he called my mom and said, pack our bags. We're going to North Carolina. I don't know for how long, because Jon's been hurt. And he switched back over on the phone and I went on autopilot. I know I did because my dad just said, do not hang up the phone. And he kept repeating, hey, Sammy, are you okay? Yeah, I'm good. Sam, are you okay? Yep, I'm good. Sam, where are you at? And so he talked me to my way home, basically, because I was by myself. And he said, okay, if you're getting on the freeway, don't miss your exit. Pay attention to what you're doing. And I'll never forget that. And I got home and I said, Dad, I'm home. And Rebecca's right behind me. So I'm going to let you go. And he said, Sam, I'll see you as soon as I can. And of course, he was in the car too, driving from work. He just instantly clocked out, said, don't
Everybody
ask
talking on the
questions.
phones while driving.
Yeah. And so, it was just at that time I was so thankful that we had this communication at the time because we didn't have that at West Point. And for my dad just to be able to stay on the phone with me and say, when you get home, we can hang up, but don't hang up until then. And I said, well, what if somebody calls? And he goes, well, you can call them back. Just don't hang up with me. And so, of course, I got home. Rebecca was right behind me. And we lived in a part of like Fayetteville area that nobody knew where our house was. And so, of course, the unit had to show up. And Rebecca had never even been at our house. That's how little I knew her before this deployment. I helped her move, but besides that, that was it. And so, of course, for me to call her in a frantic and be like, I need to talk to your husband, please. It ended up, though, that she followed me home and I said, so where's Fort Bragg? Where are they at? Where's the unit? I don't even know who's going to be showing up because I didn't know who his boss was at the time. I didn't know anything. All I knew was I was about to go to Fort Bragg and find out myself. But as Jon had said, they didn't know how to show up. And they kept getting notifications that Jon was not going to make it. And they said, we're going to give him 12 hours and that's it. And we're going to be back at your house and we're going to tell you, he didn't make it because he is in such bad shape right now. There's 0% chance he's going to make it 12 hours. And that was the very first time that I was told that.
That phrase, yeah.
Yep, 0% chance. And they said, just expect us to be back here within 12 hours. We're going to leave. Try to get some sleep tonight. We really hope that we're not going to be back here, but just know that there's a very, very strong chance that Jon's not going to make it through the night. And how do you sleep through that? I didn't. And I was up all night and I just laid in bed thinking, this is so crazy because my parents are on their way down here. Jon's parents are on their way down here. My parents will be here about 4 a.m. I said, I don't know when his parents are going to be here. And of course, all through this time, I'm looking at my phone saying, come on, Jon, just let me see these 2 blue check marks. And they never came.
And the knock on the door, I loved just talking about the family. And it was difficult with me because I was a member of two different units on Fort Bragg. I mean, as administrative command, EDCOM to the 96, so that's why everything was kind of filtering through the 96. Plus, the other unit had none of them have ever been out to my house. Uh, but I mean, that's not saying much because people in my chain of command, none of them had any idea where I lived either. And the commander at the time, lieutenant colonel type, was like, "All right, we're gonna get John." They're like, "Does anybody know where he lives?" And they kind of went around the unit until they found one of a guy I went through civil affairs qualification course with, uh, by the name of Aaron, and he's just like, "I go to John's all the time. I know exactly where he lives." So they're like, "All right, you're hired. You're gonna drive us out there." I bet you didn't know that.
Hmm.
So everybody was aware of what was going on, but Aaron drove them out there. Uh, and before this, I want to say my friends of ours that we went to church with, they went and picked Ian up from school and brought him there. Our pastor from Fayetteville had shown up because Samantha reached out to him and he knew about it and he was working with them. But one of the big things were the uniforms, and I love when Samantha talks about it, how she saw Fort Bragg, the 96th Civil Affairs Battalion commander show up, but and so she said it broke down. But one of the people in the house was like, "Wait, it's okay. What uniform are they wearing?" And she's like, they're wearing the the multicam, the ACUs or whatever. And they're like, all right, so if it was just immediately, if it was their dress uniform, it would be bad.
Yeah.
Since they're wearing their duty uniform, their
That was
daily
something like to
uniform.
me I didn't even think about. Where I was
Yeah.
like, "What? Why does that matter?" And she goes, "Sam, remember, if they're in their dress clothes, like their dress uniform, that's really bad." She goes, "This is a good thing. You have to hold on to that." And I'm going, "Well, what different? I don't care if they show up in their PTs to tell me what's happening. Just somebody tell me." But it was so the way that the casualty notification, the people who they sent out was to me the comfort that I
I mean, having
needed.
a friendly face with Aaron
And so,
being there.
yeah, his friend Aaron, who I hadn't seen in a few years, he knocked on. I goes, "What is Aaron doing here?" And so he answered the door, and I was like, "Aaron, hi!" And he instantly started crying though, and I goes, "Stop! Don't cry. I already know what happened." And he goes, "How do you know? How do you know what happened?" I goes, "Just trust me. It's gonna be okay." And he was like, "What?" And so here he is trying to pull himself together, and I said, "It's just really
You're
good to see you, but
comforting
why?"
him.
And he goes, "Why'd they send you though?" And he goes, "I don't know. I'm the only one who could find your house." And I was like, "Oh my goodness. Okay." But it was looking back now, it's funny, but at the time it was not.
And it wasn't just him that showed up. I mean, they sent so battalion commander showed up,
Mm,
who I won't lie about my relationship with the battalion commander. We didn't have the greatest relationship, so I don't think he was all that comfortable doing it. But he came out with a guy by our sergeant major Keith Bishop, who was probably one of the greatest NCOs that I've worked with. Somebody that when I'd see him, I would stand at parade rest because I was scared to death of the man. A great NCO, kind of like the person I think all NCOs should aspire to be, kind of like. They sent out our chaplain and our battalion surgeon, two people who you don't really think too much about, but now that I look back, I like the battalion surgeon's a perfect person to have out there because he can explain, all the nitty gritty medical stuff. When they're talking about a having later on what we can talk about in the hospital, but like stuff like when they mention like, all right, got to have a rhinoplasty because his rhinoceros, I don't know, whatever. I'm making up words kind of, but rhinoplasty was one of the words, and I'd be like, what the heck's that mean? They're like, nose, your nose.
he's getting a nose
Oh,
job.
what? I mean, why wouldn't you just say nose? Like, why do you got to use all this fancy stuff? And then the chaplain, whose job is, I mean, as civil affairs guys, we know, like, I feel like we know how to speak to people, but that's the chaplain's job too, to be there, like, to be the grounded individual where, be able to judge it in the room, the emotions, and kind of bring everything down. Yeah, it reminds me a lot of myself. Like, in uncomfortable situations, I'll throw a little kind of joke out there, everybody kind of chuckle and alleviate a lot of that tension. So those are the main people that were there. I believe that was
Yeah.
everybody. If I missed anybody that showed up to our house, it's not that I forgot. I wasn't
He
there.
wasn't there. No, but the one of the biggest comforts we had though was that the fact that our pastor was there, and he took our son into a different room totally, and he goes, Sam, I'm just here for you. What do you need? And I said, I don't want Ian to hear any of this right now. Because he was 6 at the time. And so he
Yeah.
said, got it. He took Ian and he turned on the Mario. We had a PlayStation, the Switch, and they played Mario. And just
But it
being able
shows you you're
to,
never. I mean, you can't do these things alone. And
yes.
my comfort to, family members, people that are getting ready to join that are listening to this or watching, mothers, wives, like not only it's stuff that you might be thinking I can't do this on my own. But want to encourage you and say you don't have to do it on your own. It's a team effort, and
Mhm.
no matter what walk of life you're in, whether you're in big army unit, whether you're under First Special Forces Command, Special Operations, you build together that team, and you don't have to do it alone. And that's what I loved about our unit was that they made sure that Samantha didn't have to do any of this stuff on her own. That people
Mhm.
were there, and then people from the outside were coming in, like she said, like our pastor, our friends from church, showing up to be like, "What can we do to help?" And it wasn't an individual effort. It was this collective.
And it was like, that's kind of like why we shared why John said, the officers always say, don't fraternize with your soldiers. Where that one time where John was like, you know what? No, like I want to know who my soldiers are. I want to know who their families are, because when your wife, who unfortunately sometimes you do get the knock on the door, but like I did, I had never ever ever imagined being that person to get the knock on the door, and when it happened, I didn't know what to do, and to have those friends and people who we considered family hold me and say, "Listen, it's gonna be okay." Because look at the uniform. I mean, something simple like that, where I would have never even thought, like, oh, yeah, the uniform, that's a good thing. And to me, like I said, I wouldn't care if they showed up in PTs, but the support that I had was more than I ever deserved. Um,
And they don't have to be trained for it. I mean, just somebody to be
yeah,
like, "Hey, breathe." I'm not breathing. Nope.
yeah.
Okay,
And
cool. Or
Yeah.
hey,
like,
have a bite to eat. Sit down. Just, I mean, like I said, you don't have to be trained, and that's what I went through casualty notification assistance casualty notification officer course, and I remember sitting there like, man, if I ever have to do this, I'm gonna have to pull my notes out. I'm gonna have to look through the book. I'm gonna have to know each step by step, and at the end of the day, that's good information to know. But what you're really there for isn't to go step by step. It's to tell somebody, hey, we're in this together. Breathe. We'll get through this. We just, get through this moment. We'll make it to the next. Get through this revolution. The next one we'll get to, and
one of the big
it's
things,
awesome.
like, I really encourage now is wives to get involved as much as you can. I mean, they push it all the time, like, oh, join the FRG, join the FRG. And FRG gets a bad rap all the time for no reason. They want that connection that, like, we did outside of the FRG, though. They want to know your spouses. They want to know who you are. They need help in situations like what we were in, because I don't think any of the FRG knew who I was, because I never got involved, which I regret now. And I thought, boy, this probably would have been a lot easier if I was a part of the FRG, but we did so much outside of his work with his teammates and the shooting days at our house and the gun range stuff. We were so involved that way that I never even thought, like, oh, I should join the FRG. And John was always like, I just don't want you to be part of the FRG because I don't want work brought home, and I want
Yeah.
to separate work from home. And I said, okay, I understand. I was involved with it when we were at Fort Stewart, and I loved it. And so when he said, please just don't, like, just, we'll be okay without it. Just, we'll do stuff at home. But to encourage wives to get involved and to go to the crazy Halloween trunk or treats or Christmas parties, anything like that, I very much encourage it. And get to know your spouse's friend or their teammates and their spouses and know them by name, know them by birthday. I mean, we that's how close we got to some of our friends is I still know their birthdays and where they live and what they're doing, their kids' names, stuff like that. And just to have those connections, I was so thankful for because John, of course, instilled it and said, our unit takes care of each other. And this unit that I'm in, it's going to be totally different. And when he was hurt and the chain of command came over, the first thought I had was, great, I gave up dental assisting. I gave it all up because I wanted to chase my husband and do what he was. I wanted to be that military wife and I wanted to do that lifestyle so bad that I didn't think about myself. And I gave up everything. I gave up my career for him. And I thought, how on earth am I going to take care of him now? Like, we solely depend on my husband's paycheck. I solely depend on him to make sure the bills are paid because he did that. I mean, he's an exceptional husband. He did all that. Even on deployments, he made sure the bills were done. I'm like, I should be doing that, but it was something he liked to do, and he just said, "No, I'll make sure the bills are paid." And um, didn't want me to worry about that. My job was to take care of our family and take care of the home while he was gone. And I mean, I feel bad every time he came home. I had a different house project done, and he came home to something new every time in the house. But it was just one of those things where he said, we'll be taken care of. It's okay. When his boss then said, Sam, you never have to worry another day in your life. John's going to retire and you'll be fine. And when he said that, I knew that was God speaking through him and saying, don't worry about that stuff. Like, that's not important. Right now is your husband's health and your health, and take care of yourself and eat, go to Panera Bread and stuff like that. And, but looking back now, I can say this because I've experienced it, but you got to take care of yourself before anybody else. And that was the biggest thing in John's recovery was making sure, every time somebody came up, they said, "Hey, Sam, are you taking care of yourself?" And I goes, "No, I'm taking care of my husband. What does it look like?" And they're like,
Yeah.
"Well, have you had lunch today?" "No." "Well, cafeteria's closed in 20 minutes. Go get something to eat. We got this." And like guys from the unit would come up to the hospital and they would force me out. They'd say, "Sam, we got this." Like, John is our guy. He would let us take care of him, to the point, like, he had his boss came and he goes, "What can I do? What can I do to help?" And he held John's pee jug for him one time and was like, "Let me help in some way." He goes, "Listen, that's kind of personal. I can do that." And he goes, "No, go sit down. You've been on your feet all day." And I mean, it was those relationships
And the
that we
throat
had.
bag.
Yeah, and throw bags. But it was very special to have people come up and say, "I take care of you." And I'd never understood what that meant until now, looking back when I was like, "Oh my goodness, my feet hurt so bad. If I could have just sat down for
Yeah.
10 minutes, I'd been a better person." But I put John first always and not myself. And I got that burnout where I was like, "Oh, I'm tired." Um, but the military is such an incredible force, and the stuff that's available for spouses is just, I can't even put into words how thankful I am for everything. I mean, people would come in and bring in fresh fruit and they said, "You got to eat something good, not hospital food all the time." And
Yeah.
for people to just bring like oranges and apples in, I was like, "Oh, yeah, I guess I could use some fruit in my life." But it just the people who showed up and showed out and helped along the way. I mean, our
Yeah.
chaplain was an incredible person. Um, so selfless, and they flew him and the medic flew over to Germany with me to be with John, and I will always be so thankful for everything that they did for us there. But
Yeah.
their training got put into place where they said, "Hey, we're going to be at shift change at 7 a.m, but we're still active duty and we're going to work out before we do the hustle and bustle of the day. So if you want to come work out with us at 4 o'clock in the morning, we're going to meet at the track." And I goes, "You guys are nuts. My world does not spin before 7 a.m. And,
Solar
but for
powered.
them, yeah, for them to stay in that soldier mentality of, hey, we got to get work done first. They had everything taken care of for us. And not one day in the hospital did I ever have to think about what's going on back home and what papers do I have to sign for John medically. Is insurance taken care of? How is this going to get paid? Nothing. I never had to worry once about any of that. And even guys, they would come up and um, say, hey, what's going on this week? Does John have what surgeries are coming up? Tell us what's the plan for the week. They would report back to the unit and say, here's what's going on with John. Here's where he's at physically. Here's where he's at mentally. Here's the challenges that he's faced this week. And of course, John, he's laying in bed and he goes, I got to get back to work. Get me out of this bed. I got a mission I got to finish up. But for them to come up and just say, no, John, you need to rest right now. I mean, when everybody just takes over, John had a big job. He had a whole unit he was taking care of. And for them to just all step in and take over for him,
Yeah.
I mean, you can't say thank you enough for that.
Well, that means you
Just to
trained
let
him
him
good.
rest and recovery. And for him, he got in the mindset of, I got to wake up every day and do PT. When can I go? Can I go down to the gym? Can I work out? And they're like, John, you were just blown up. Like, you still have a trach in your throat. You can't do nothing. But he had that mentality of, let me out of here. I got a mission to do. And I got to get back to my guys. And I think that mentality is what got him through as fast as he did. Because, I mean, the book, we go through a lot of what happened in the hospital and his recovery. And he had this mindset of, I got to get out of here. And he did. He got out exceptionally fast. But we were given over and over again 0% chance that this is going to happen. And we just one day were sitting there and John said, you know what, I'm going to write a book one day and it's going to be titled 0% Chance because I want to prove to everybody that God stepped into our lives 100% and took over. And what a testimony to have. And I mean, we go into a lot of detail about different miracles that happened and God stepping in when I should have, like, anybody else in the situation without a faith would have said, forget you, God. I'm alone. I got to do this myself. But I'm so thankful for the faith that we both had to just say, God, take over. And we're just going to sit back and watch what happens.
The road to recovery is very long, and obviously had a lot of obstacles and pitfalls and whatnot along the way. But for anybody that may be going through a similar scenario as a soldier, a spouse, a mother, a father, could you each, from your own perspective, give like one piece of advice a piece to anybody that may be going through something similar from?
Yep. My thing I would say is kind of what I had alluded to or hit on earlier. Remember, no matter what you're going through, you're not alone. There are so many people out there. I mean, there are, I would like to say every single American, but I mean, that's of course not true, an absolute, but most Americans out there want to help, would want to help you. There are great organizations, entities. I mean, we learned about one, and we were fortunate enough to belong to Special Operations. Under Special Operation Command, they have a whole entity called the Care Coalition, that their whole existence, the reason for existing, is to take care of not necessarily the service member, but the service member's family. So our Care Coalition rep, her name was Heidi. She was there at the I don't know,
Hospital doors, as
the
soon as we got
evacuation
there.
at Dover. Not dignified transfers, what you do with the killed in action, but when we came home on the medevac and we got aboard the bus that took us to the hospital, she was there.
She was the first face that we saw at Walter Reed.
Yep. And the person that was like, Samantha, where's your jacket? It's January in DC. I didn't bring one. We'll go get you one. Like, what do you need? What can we do to help you out? Like, so I just bring that up. I mean, like, we were lucky enough that we had this one that they sought us out. So that being said, I mean, talk to soldiers that are in the predicament, and I hope nobody's in this predicament that I was in, but soldiers, your families, talk with your units and don't be bashful about it. If you need something, say you need it. And not just the units, but their organizations. I mean, I'm wearing one of their sweatshirts right now. The fund, which is America's Fund, helped us out. A random organization, nonprofit that I'd never heard about before, that showed up while we we're at Walter Reed, and they asked the question, "What do you guys need? How can we help?" And you don't know what you don't know, and you don't know what you need. So like that, people will get to work to help you out. The Red Cross, Wounded Warrior, I mean, like all these phenomenal organizations, but also like the people, bring together the people, and like asking for help. Like one of the things I mentioned earlier was the battalion surgeon, the PA, come down. Like I loved him coming to my doctor's visits because just that the joke that I made about the rhinoplasty, where they kept talking about this rhinoplasty, and finally I was just like, "What the heck is he talking about?" My PA was like, "He's talking about your nose." Same thing, like another one, tympanoplasty. I didn't know what that was. And like, we got to fix the tympanic membrane. And I was like, not my tympanic membrane. Well, I survived. They're like, that's your ear. I'm like, oh, okay. But ask for that help if you you feel you will be overwhelmed. There will be days where, like Samantha says, she's wanted 10 minutes off of her feet. Where don't worry about being like, hey nurse, can you come just sit with him for 10 minutes? I have to sit down. I need a nap. I need to go back. I need to rest tonight.
I got in that mindset of only I can do it. Only I can take care of my husband. Only I can do everything. I have to
trust
do
other
everything
people.
myself. And I think it was my sister. I don't even remember. Somebody told me, they said, you do realize like nurses get paid to do what you're doing? They're there to do that for you. You need to go home and you need to sleep. And I goes, what? And they're like, when was the last time you got a full night of sleep? I don't know. That's the wrong answer. Go home. And we had nurses who I had to eat that humble pie where I said, no, let somebody else do this. That's what they're there for. They're bored. They're night shift nurses. They want to do something.
Trust the system. And in the book, I did mention a negative experience with it all. But we had, I want to say, like out of the 2 years I was at Walter Reed, I think I had one, maybe two at the most, of negative experiences with the nurses. Like they were top notch people that, for example, there's one young lady that was my nurse that I, like she was just amazing. I would call her, like it'd be 3 o'clock in the morning. I'd be like, Gabby, I need help. And she'd come running in there. What's going on? Was it your heartbeat? Are you bleeding? What's wrong? And I'd be like, my iPod stopped playing music. Can you hit play on it or shuffle? Mm-hmm. And she'd be like, you big dummy. And
go to sleep.
Help me out. That's just a a non-emergency situation. But they were there. They were always there. I had for our soldiers that deal with PTSD, depression. I mean, I'm right there with you. I've dealt with it. It's not fun, but trusting the system. People, counselors, now I'm talking to them, but not just that. Like people want to help. Like my nurses, like I'd be like, I'm not doing good right now, and they'd be like, why not? I don't know. I just cooped up syndrome. I'm depressed. I dealt with a lot of the why me. The
survivor's guilt too.
Survivor's guilt. Yeah. Why did I survive and my guys didn't? What could I have done? And they'd be like, you know what? Get out of bed. I'd be like, why? And like, get out of bed. You got to do something to, get your mind off of that. And, they got to know me that well that we would end up like walking laps around the hospital. Like I'm totally blind, so I can't see. So this kind of sucks. So what do we do? So we just kind of Congo lined it, put my hand on their shoulders and walk behind them, and we do it. And it was amazing. And it's not just that.
John, if you do 5 laps around the ward, we'll give you a donut.
But yeah, they would offer food. I had
donuts are the star of the book. Yes.
I work for donuts. But I mean, I even had the physical therapist. They had me doing stuff that I wanted. Like I had my left leg muscle pulled out and put on my face. That's what this is on my right, over my right eye, a skin flap holding my face together. And I was worried that I wouldn't. We had stairs in our house. How am I going to get upstairs without a left thigh muscle? So I went to the physical therapist. I was like, I need to walk up and down some stairs. Let's figure this out. And they they did everything but the stairs, I felt like, initially, and then they started to work through it. But I didn't want to do it. So I'd be like, nah, not today. I'm not feeling it. And they finally got down to it. They're like, all right, John, we're going to go for a 1/4 mile walk. It's like, who wants to walk a 1/4 mile? That sounds lame. They're like, we'll get you a Frosty at the end because Wendy's was a 1/4 mile away. I'm in. Let's go. I'd jump out of bed for it. But people are there to help. People want to help. As an encouragement to our soldiers' families, they're like, even in your darkest days, there are people that will always be
There's
there for
always
you. If you
someone.
don't have to take on the burden alone, you know, rely on the team, rely on each other, rely on the people around you, and trust them. Trust the system. Trust the people. Trust your unit, and you let them help you through the worst. So that's kind of my advice.
Yeah, mine would be. I mean, I pretty much say the same thing, but I know I wouldn't have been able to do half the stuff. I mean, not even a quarter of the stuff that I had to go through if it weren't for my faith. Um, I very much encourage everybody to build a relationship with God. And I mean, I just don't have the words to say how important it was. Um, Looking back to just say, God is really what got me through all of this. I can, without a doubt, say that. That and our pastor and our chaplain and their faith kept me going. Um, I mean, the miracles in the book that we wrote about exactly say, like, if you have any doubt that God does not exist, read this book. Um, and I don't mean to push faith on anybody, but if I did not have, I know at the time, like before this all happened, my faith is kind of, yeah, okay. My dad was a pastor. I'm a pastor's kid. I grew up in the church, but I never had that relationship that you hear people have where it's just like, I heard God speak to me on this day at this time. And I always was like, oh, I don't know. I've never had that. So is there really a God? Is there really a faith to fall back on like that? And God definitely showed up and showed me, hey, I'm here, I'm real. And if you don't believe it, watch what I'm about to do. And a lot of John's recovery, I mean, John said a lot of times, he goes, if I had to do this over and over again just to impact one person's life, I'll do it 1,000 times. And I know a lot of times I question it myself, but I think, maybe I'm that one person to John that God said, hey, she needs you, John. She needs to see that I'm real and that I do exist. And I'm forever thankful for it. And I mean, John, I mean, I don't wish this on anybody. And if it's this extreme, I mean, you got to have your faith though to fall back on it and say, God does exist and He is there and He's going to help you through this. And the deployments where He would be gone for 9 months at a time, where I just thought, I'm so alone. I wasn't alone. I had God with me all along. I just didn't have that relationship that I wish I had. Now I do. I mean, I have an incredible relationship now, but it was just one of those things where if you ever doubted that you're alone in any type of journey, you're not. And like John said, there's foundations, there's people, there's your soldiers, there's their families, there's God, there's a pastor anywhere. You just got to rely on other people though. And I'm so thankful for the church family that we had and their support, because theirs was, I mean, I can praise the military all day long for everything they did, but our church family that we had stepped in more than that. And I feel so bad knowing that every day there's 22 soldiers who want to take their life. And it's so hard to know that and just think, if they had this relationship with God, or they had a relationship in a church, or just relationships with their soldiers like what we had. I mean, it makes me sad and it breaks my heart to know that there is soldiers out there who don't feel that way and they don't feel that anybody cares, but to know that the experience we went through should have broke us into 1,000 pieces, and it didn't. It brought us closer together more than anything, and our relationship with God more than anything. But that's kind of my encouragement, is just to get involved in a church, get involved with your community, get involved with people, because you're going to find that group of people that you belong with. And they're going to help you through anything. And I mean, to this day, we have such a strong community behind us. And it's amazing. I mean, Facebook is so silly, but I mean, I can get on Facebook and just, I mean, the day of the explosion, I have an unspoken prayer request, and I had hundreds of people reach out and just say, anything you need, anything you need. They mean it. I mean, even if it's just a simple text to say, hey, I'm struggling. I've had that moment where I've reached out to different people and said, I'm really struggling today. I don't know why I got to say it. I am, but I am. And the community just has come together so much. And I'm so thankful for everybody in our life and the different connections that we've been able to make in the military and outside of the military. And it's just been an incredible journey to go through.
Well, high school sweethearts, and y'all made it through the college years in a long distance relationship. Y'all beat so many odds. It's truly inspirational, the two of you, and we can't thank you enough for coming on and sharing a few hours with us today to tell your story.
Oh, thank you for putting up with our crazy dog and then our 2-year-old.
They've been pretty good.
Well, they're all part of the story too, right?
That's right.
So,
yes.
And y'all had a youngin' together even after all this, which is just
two
amazing.
of them.
Yep. Yeah. So since then, I mean, like the why me type things, like what's my, one of the big things that soldiers deal with is that what happens after the military, finding purpose. And since then, I mean, we've had 2 children, a little boy.
When we were given 0% chance of ever having kids again.
Yeah, we couldn't have kids, but we had kids.
Challenge accepted.
And exactly. And side note, we loved it because Samantha was 8 months pregnant when I left the hospital in November of 2021. No, present is right after the election. So
yeah, we don't know times anymore.
But anyway, and President Trump came to the hospital, and he had just lost the his reelection. And I remember him being like, "Hey guys, can you give me some good news? Because like I'm having a rough time, all this." And that's when we got to tell him. I remember being like, "Mr. President, well, we're gonna have a baby." And he's like, "Huh?" And Sam's like, "I'm pregnant, Mr. President." He's like, "Wait, everybody, stop talking. What did you guys say?" And she's like, showed her belly. She's like, "I'm 8 months pregnant. We're gonna have a baby in about 2 months.
I gotta go home."
And I remember President Trump just being like, "Wait, huh, John? How did this happen?" Like blind guy, like something about blind squirrel every now and then finding we won't go there. But Mr. President, if you don't know by now, it's too late. Loved it. But 2 babies. I since have become. I ran for local politics, and I was elected by the people to be a county commissioner. So finding purpose, but not just purpose. Doing things like coming on your guys' show on hashtag Tracer Burnout. But also bringing together the family. We call it the January 16th family. Scott Wertz was unmarried, but he's survived by his mother and father and stepfather. We do stuff with them. I was just in Florida with them 2 weekends ago. John Farmer, Chief Farmer's widow. I was with her in Florida as well. She, of all things, made me run a half marathon. God help us all. I still hurt, and that was 2 weeks ago. But bringing together the family, so just what we're talking about, how you don't have to do this alone. Same thing. I mean, they lost. They're all gold star members, and letting them know you don't have to do this alone. We can do this together. Let's it's all about more or less smiles. Like let's try to find reasons to smile. Let's stay positive and come together. When you need help, I'm there. Tabitha called. I need help, John. I'm there, even for a half marathon. Oh dear God. Okay, we'll figure something out.
And choosing to do those.
But we've come together, and absolutely amazing. So finding that purpose, and another thing I encourage all the listeners, all the soldiers, as you get ready to retire, get out medically, or just get out regular, you'll have to find purpose, but you can find it. Like you might have to search for it, but it is there. Find a way to continue to make the world a better place.
Choose to
You know,
do it,
continue
too.
that warrior ethos that you'll never quit. Always place the mission first. You know, never leave a fallen comrade. Um, just keep going. Keep, or as Joe Dirt would say, keep on keeping on. Sort of.
Well, thank you so much. Again, we hope everybody goes out and buys the book or the audiobook. We could talk to you guys for hours more because you guys' story is so awesome. But we know that you have many other things going on. So thank you so much for joining us.
Thank
We
you.
really appreciate it.
God bless you both. Thank you.
And God bless you guys. God bless America. And God bless our soldiers.
So, what'd you think?
I mean, it's hard to even put some of it into words. The book is amazing if you really want to get a detailed explanation of the lead up to the event itself, and then basically the medical slash, relationship journey that they go on. Pretty much towards the end, because even to this day, they're still going through the medical journey continues, right?
Right.
So in regards to today, we didn't want to focus too much on the book in and of itself, although obviously there was a lot of overlap. I loved hearing their backstory, how they ended up together.
Yeah.
I did not know that they had done the long distance relationship through the entirety of his time at West Point. I mean, you want to talk about beating the odds.
Yeah.
Because you have to know all the naysaying that was going on in their own personal lives. Whether it was her, who was still in high school, and all the people that are in her ear saying, "Oh, come on, he's a college boy. He's going to go off and do his own thing. He's going to leave you in the dust." And then on his end, like, really, you're doing this, man. Come on, you've got your whole career ahead of you. How? So it just amazing.
One of the big contributing factors was, I mean, Samantha said it herself. Her now mother-in-law's willingness to, take her along anytime. And I mean, obviously, the opportunities were few and far between.
Yeah.
In an era with no cell phones and really no email, and plus, the West Point imposed restrictions.
Yeah.
So the family's really helped make it work too.
Yeah.
That is still really a funny thought of her changing into her ball gown in a tent,
in a camping tent or whatever.
You think of, like, your girlfriend, your spouse, whatever, getting all done up to go to this fancy formal to do, and she's doing it all in the tent. And
that is a Renaissance woman right there.
That is quite the story.
Perfect.
But,
so,
yeah.
So as a civil affairs guy, I co-sign everything they said in regards to life in a kind of a small-ish special operations type unit. They tend to be very close, some more than others. So it's all true. I like how, kind of backing up a little bit, his first deployment when he was a cavalry guy, not cavalry, by the way. I hate it when people say that. Cavalry. He said that was 9 months.
Yeah.
And that happened pretty early on in their marriage. I mean, it was like you show up as a lieutenant, and I think you and I can certainly.
I mean, their eldest son was born, and then a few days later, right?
I think he said a day or so later is when he got the call.
Is when he got the call to
negotiated it out.
He got a week, I think.
Yeah,
and then it's time to go.
I think you and I can certainly relate to deploying extremely early in your military career, albeit we were both single guys on our first ones anyway. Yeah. So that adds kind of an extra layer, because I didn't get married till after my second deployment. Yeah.
Yeah. Still a great story.
Yeah.
And I will say this about the book. If you want a better understanding of kind of what civil affairs does and how they take on projects to affect change in a lot of different ways, he does a very good job in the book of kind of laying out the dominoes in a line so
Yeah.
that you can see how this does this, does this, does this, does this, and how they kind of all tip over together to make things happen.
Yeah.
He does a very good job with that. And he worked with some really great people who, I mean, like Sam said, they became family.
Yeah.
You know, and how they all came together in just a truly, I mean, to say it was a time of need is really underselling it.
Yeah.
So truly a great inspirational story. They've really got them. Yeah.
Another recurring theme that we have on these episodes, and we barely scratched the surface on it today, but I mean, it was at the very end, really, and it was survivor guilt.
Yeah.
So again, it's another omnipresent reality that so many of us face and have to live with, and it you kind of have to steer into the skid on these things.
Yeah. I mean, we could have talked to both of them for hours more about some of the triumphs that they've had and some of the tragedies and how they've coped with different things and whatnot. But the message that they had at the end, and a shared message, a joint message of ask for the help.
Yeah.
Don't be stubborn. Don't be prideful. If you need the help, if you're, whether it's in a moment like that they had, or just a moment of that's just going to be, something that passes rather quickly, ask for the help if you need it.
Yeah. If you're in extremis, ask for the help, but you don't have to wait.
Yeah.
Until that point.
Yeah, absolutely. But great stuff.
Yeah. We can't thank you enough, Jon and Sam. Thank you so much for taking the time to come on. And we've been kind of negotiating a good timing on this, and we figured Valentine's Day would be perfect time for something like this, and I think that was a good choice. So
yes.
So any parting shots on the Turnbulls?
I hope that right now, because we just got done recording with them, I hope that right now Jon is calling some of his West Point brethren to find out his record in fencing against the Naval.
It's like nobody's ever actually asked me that question before until today. Congratulations, Daniel.
It's got to be better than the football record, right?
As long as it's better than Navy. Well, yeah, that's not saying much, but yeah. I don't think this is the last we've seen of the Turnbulls, just because we have so many mutual friends and everything. Yeah. So we'll see. We'll see what the future holds. But
just maybe, if they come down here to visit some friends or family, then maybe we can get them in studio for a part 2.
That would be amazing, because we have a lot more we'd like to discuss with them. Oh, yeah. But in the interest of time, we excuse me, we cut it short today. Okay, any parting shots?
Nope.
On the Turnbulls.
I think that's it.
Okay, free fire area. The time has come. I'm going to posit a simple yes or no question to you. Is there a such thing as a vodka martini?
Yes. Yes, there is. There is. The oldest English bartender's guide in the world has the recipe for a vodka martini. Now, some people prefer it with gin. I don't care. The oldest bartending manual in English in the world. I wish I could remember the name. It's like Booker's or Butler's or something like that. Has the martini as being made with vodka. Not gin, which is a disgusting beverage, and anyone that drinks it should be ashamed of themselves, to include the person sitting directly to my right, who is a man of little to no taste when it comes to spirits. But I forgive him. At least that one fault I will forgive him for, if not much else. But honestly, when it comes down to it, if that's how you prefer to take it, by all means, go ahead. If you prefer it with vodka, if you prefer it with gin, if you like your rum and Coke, not a Coke, but a Pepsi, I don't care. Go ahead. If you like your, I don't know. What's another? I'm sure there's probably 17 different ways to make a daiquiri. I don't care. If it's the way you like it, then it's the way you like it.
I mean, you can be wrong while you're doing it, but
No, you can't.
all right.
If it's the way you enjoy it, then it's the way you enjoy it.
All right. So here's the double tap: shaken or stirred.
I really don't care because I'm not a martini guy.
Okay.
Martinis aren't really my thing. I'll enjoy one from time. Our friend Kyle makes a pretty good martini. He makes a pretty good martini, and so if he's making a batch, then I will absolutely have one. But
He makes dirty martinis.
he does. Sometimes he makes them pretty dirty,
the dirtiest.
the dirtiest of martinis. But I'm not really a martini guy. I could probably count on one hand how many I've had in the last 5 years. So
Well,
I mean, go ahead since allegedly you're this martini expert with all sorts of
not an expert.
judgment and condemnation to throw at anyone who dare disagree with you.
Okay, Mr. Jellied Cranberry Sauce. Okay. Mr. Pumpkin Spice. Okay.
Yes.
The correct answer is there is no such thing as a vodka
See,
martini.
there's that judgment.
Yeah.
There's that judgment.
A martini by definition must be made from gin.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't. I already described this or answered this for you. But by all means,
by
go ahead.
citing something that you didn't know the name of, yes. Okay.
Oh, okay. We've had this discussion before, and I threw it right at you. Actually, it's in one of our community posts, I believe.
Saying that you can make a vodka martini would be saying something like you can make a football bat.
You could make a football bat.
And
you'd have to invent an entirely new sport for it, but go ahead.
Martinis must be stirred, not shaken. I don't care how many stupid James Bond movies you've ever seen. Because I'm not going to use the right bartending words, but when you shake, you're basically bruising the aromatics within the gin because that's what you're making it out of, because there's no such thing as a vodka martini. Mm-hmm. And it actually changes the chemistry of the thing and of the drink itself, and you're ruining it when you shake it.
There's that judgment and condemnation.
Yes.
Yeah.
So
that air of
gin
spirit-wise superiority that he exudes. There it is for you.
Well, I've made my point. So
has he though? Has he?
Well, I mean, in between you interrupting me during my period to talk. Yes.
Well, when you're wrong, you're wrong. So,
thank you everybody for listening and or watching our show today. Mm-hmm. We think it was one that took several months for us to kind of bring together. We think it was very special.
Yep.
Pretty amazing guests.
Yep.
It's the first one of these of this kind that we've done before. Of course, we prefer to record in studio, but we will not ever pass up an opportunity to talk to some pretty amazing people in this format.
Yep.
So hopefully we can get some more of these in the future.
Yep.
Please give us a visit on all our social media: Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn. We are on X, believe it or not. Give us a like, share, subscribe, comment. Give us a nice 5-star rating on the podcast platforms. That really helps amplify the show. You want to take us out here, Mr. Baker?
Yeah. Thanks again to Jon and Samantha and their family for their service, their sacrifice, and their incredible story. And remember, your service matters.